Chapter 40-49. Although Old Man Song was ridiculing him, but in his heart, he was extremely happy. Her face was full of smiles. Girl Luo was really. Only in front of the venerable sovereign would she show her feminine side. Only then would she be more real. Old Man Song was truly rejoicing. For a DMO Xian to appear by Yiqing Luo's side. He was also thankful from the bottom of his heart that DMO Xian had appeared in Yiqing Luo's life. Old Song. Hearing Old Man Song's voice, the blush on Yiqing Luo's face stiffened. With a swish, her face turned even redder. You. When did you come out? Previously, her face was blushing. That was the color of spring. Now Yiqing Luo's cheeks were flushed red. Old Man Song's spiritual body floated over. Dizun has something to deal with. He'll be back in 2 hours. I'll stay here to watch over you. In other words, Old Man Song had been in the room for a long time. After she woke up, her heart was full of cursing DMO Xian's beastly behavior last night, totally not noticing it at all. She had lost all her face. Yiqing Luo wanted to cover her face and howl. But when he saw Old Man Song's spiritual body, he was startled for a moment. What's going on with you? Why is your spirit body so weak? In the cave, Old Man Song's spirit body was still very sturdy. Why did he look so thin and transparent? As if a gust of wind could blow him away. Old Man Song lowered his head, raised his hands, and looked at himself. He smiled as he shook his head. It's nothing, it's just a little accident. I'll be able to recover after resting in the Azure Dew bracelet for a period of time. As he spoke, he floated to the side of the bed. Get up, Dizun has prepared lunch for you in the kitchen. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as the smile on her face faded and her expression turned grave. You are like this because of Xian? With Old Man Song's strength, plus the fact that he could enter and exit the Azure Dew bracelet at any time. How could he be injured by someone? Even his spirit body had become weak? Unless it was Old Man Song who volunteered. In addition, after Old Man Song heard her question, he didn't directly answer it and even deliberately changed the topic. Yiqing Luo was certain. The person who turned Old Man Song into such a state was definitely someone she knew. Then only DMO Xian could injure Old Man Song. After confirming this point, Yiqing Luo went through the entire incident in her mind. He could also guess the reason why DMO Xian made a move against Old Man Song. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips tightly and lowered her head guiltily. Old Man Song, I'm sorry. It was because of her that DMO Xian took action. Silly girl, why are you apologizing to me? I don't blame you or the Overlord. Old Man Song stretched out his hand and made a gesture of slapping Yiqing Luo's head across the air. He smiled helplessly and shook his head. You almost exploded and died because the power in your body was too strong. This is indeed my fault. Dizun should blame me. It's not your fault. Yiqing Luo leaned against the headboard and lowered her eyes. I already have the whereabouts of the third divine relic. Naturally, I will not give up. Even if you don't tell me how to open the door of the passage, I will find a way to enter the enchantment of the divine relic. Furthermore, if I had been able to control the divine phoenix profound heart jade, I would not have been in such a dire situation. So, in the end, it was all because of her greed that caused her to become like this. Old Man Song looked at Yiqing Luo's slightly gloomy aura, and his eyes flashed with some emotion. Chapter 40-50. His tone was obviously a little apprehensive. He seemed to be suppressing some sort of emotion. Yiqing Luo raised her eyes. Her bright as ink eyes quietly looked at Old Man Song. Those clean, pure eyes. This caused Old Man Song's heart to grow increasingly apprehensive. When he raised his head to meet Yiqing Luo's gaze, he was rather cautious. Old Man Song, you know my personality very well, don't you? Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as her brows carried a smile. I believe you. I should have told you these 4 words many times. He answered without hesitation. Just like in the cave, when he suggested for Yiqing Luo to drip her blood into the eyes of the mural. Without any hesitation, he did as he was told. Just because Yiqing Luo did it. That was why she was so close to bursting from the power, causing her body to explode and die. Actually, he had his own selfish motives. Old Man Song pursed his lips into a straight line. His aged face was filled with complicated emotions. The gaze he shot towards Yiqing Luo was filled with guilt. Old Man Song's mood changed. Yiqing Luo naturally felt it and saw it in her eyes. Old Man Song, will you hurt me? She was still smiling, and her eyes were gentle. Old Man Song didn't even think about it and reflexively replied, I won't. Yiqing Luo smiled. Isn't that enough? No matter what secrets you want to hide, as long as you treat me sincerely, that's enough. She never doubted Old Man Song's sincerity towards her. All along, it had always been Old Man Song who was always by her side. Back then, he had even wanted to sacrifice himself to save her. So what if he had a lot of secrets? It was not important. The Azure Dew bracelet was no ordinary object. As the artifact spirit of the Azure Dew bracelet, how could it be an ordinary person? Since he had chosen to contract the Azure Dew bracelet, he chose Old Man Song. She would trust Old Man Song unconditionally. She believed it too. When her strength reached the level that Old Man Song approved of, Old Man Song would definitely take the initiative to tell her all the secrets. Last Luo. He had to admit that Yiqing Luo's words made his desolate heart feel a sense of warmth. He was a spiritual body. There is no heart. However, the warmth of his body and the uncontrollable shaking of his body were so real. Old Man Song let out a low laugh. His somewhat transparent, glowing hand covered his face, covering his slightly reddened eyes. He chuckled softly, as though he had finally let go of the boulder that had been weighing down on his heart. His voice was filled with ease. Hiding a secret. How did you detect it? It's very obvious. Yiqing Luo looked at him. Perhaps you've never thought of hiding it from me, isn't it? Indeed. Old Man Song let go of his hand and met Yiqing Luo's gaze. These matters will eventually have to be told to you. It's just that. Now is not the time. I know. Yiqing Luo had no intention to interrogate him. I believe in you, just like how you believe in me, that's enough. The smile on Old Man Song's face grew even wider. That old face was covered with a relaxed and sincere smile. Under this warm and kind smile, his spirit body slowly floated into the Azure Dew bracelet. Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes as she caressed the bracelet on her wrist, and looked at it for a long time. Afterwards, she laughed lightly, lifted the quilt, and got up from the bed. Regarding Old Man Song, she didn't intend to question or satisfy her curiosity. The secret that Old Man Song was hiding was related to the sovereign of the Divine Emperors. Chapter 40-51. Old Man Song's attitude towards the Divine Emperor was very complicated. It was respect that emanated from his bones. Moreover, Old Man Song and the Divine Emperor's faces were filled with nostalgia. Presumably, Old Man Song was definitely acquainted with the Divine Emperor, and their relationship could definitely be considered close. To be able to have such a close relationship with someone as noble as the Divine Emperor, Old Man Song's identity wasn't simple either. She had previously said that she would think of a way to help Old Man Song recover his true body. And after that, the days ahead were probably going to be even more dangerous. These were all areas that she could not explore at the moment. Now he was still not strong enough. In the face of many things, he was still in a passive state. This time, it was her carelessness that allowed the palace of gloomy darkness to take advantage of them. Yiqing Luo slowly clenched her fists tightly. He felt the dark force in his body circulating through his limbs and bones. The smile at the corner of his mouth gradually became firm. She would work harder, even more powerful. After washing up, Yiqing Luo ate the lunch that Dmo Xian had specially prepared for her. He strolled around the area for a while. Dmo Xian was nowhere to be seen. Wearing a veil, she sat on the first floor of the inn, drinking tea and listening to the gossip around her. She felt bored. Just as he was about to get up and return to his room, he heard someone from the next table say, "Do you guys think that the matter regarding the Empyrean Fairy in Shadowless City is true?" The person beside him said, "It must be true. If it was fake, the Overlord would have killed her already, wouldn't he?" That's right, that's the Overlord. If the mysterious fairy of Shadowless City had lied, would the Overlord allow her to live until now? Shadowless City's mysterious maiden. Overlord, these few words fell into Yi Qing Luo's ears. The body that let her stand up slowly sat back down. Are these people talking about the real and fake venerable sovereign? It had already been a few days since the incident. Why were they still so interested in gossiping? She wanted to hear how the other citizens viewed the matter of Mu Qiulan and the impostor. In the past 3 days, Dmo Xian did not bring her back to the Qiao family. Instead, he found a small inn in the main city of Shadowless City. They were probably worried that she would take too long to level up and cause everyone to worry about her. So he didn't go back. He didn't expect to hear gossip about himself here. She overheard the gossip at the next table, and naturally, other people heard it as well. Immediately, the people at the other table came over and said, "The Overlord loves Madame D very much. He would never do anything to betray her. What deep is the ocean? That's just a show for us ordinary people. Otherwise, why would the Empyrean Fairy of Shadowless City appear? There's no smoke without fire. If the mysterious Fairy of Shadowless City really has nothing going on with the Overlord, how would she dare to say that she slept with the Overlord in front of him?" The people at the other table were rebuked, and their expressions darkened. "I'm afraid you guys don't know? I heard that a few days ago, there were 2 venerable sovereigns who looked exactly the same. The mysterious Fairy of Shadowless City thought that the venerable sovereign who was related to her was actually a fake imposter. Why is it different from what I heard?" The person sitting at the next table told him what he had heard. "Isn't that imposter the Overlord's Lady Emperor's secret guard who deliberately pretended to be the Overlord in an attempt to ruin the reputation of Shadowless City's fairy?" Chapter 4052. The boss of Jubao is Lady D's friend. Of course he would speak for Lady D. "That's right, young man. You're still too naive." The person at the next table patted the shoulder of the person at the other table. Then he continued, "And a few days ago, didn't the mysterious Fairy of Shadowless City return to the Qiao mansion? It was Lady D's friends who brought her back personally. These days, the mysterious Fairy of Shadowless City has been staying at the Qiao mansion. The Overlord is staying at the Qiao mansion. The mysterious Fairy of Shadowless City has been brought to the Qiao mansion. But Lady D hasn't returned yet. What does this mean?" "It means Lady D is going to be replaced." The person at the next table clicked his tongue. Then he noticed that the person at the other table had an ugly look on his face. He pretended to be mysterious as he patted the person's shoulder and whispered, "Young man, since we're fated to meet today, I have a piece of news that no one else knows." Everyone's curiosity was piqued. The person at the next table gathered everyone together and whispered, "I heard. The Overlord is completely enraged because Lady D used a substitute to impersonate him, so..." He paused and purposely kept them in suspense. "You must keep it a secret. Don't dawdle. Tell us." "So what? What happened?" Hearing the urgency in their voices, the person at the next table smiled in satisfaction and continued, "So, Lady D has been killed by the Overlord himself." What? The few of them cried out in shock. The person at the next table immediately covered their mouths. Shoo. They couldn't believe what they were hearing. Their faces were full of shock and disbelief. That person tried to rope in the crowd again and continued in a low voice, "Don't doubt me, these words. I heard it from the Empyrean Fairy of Shadowless City and her rich friends. Now His Majesty is looking for a suitable opportunity to make her the real Madam of the Emperor." Everyone looked at each other with different expressions. Gossip was one thing. It was one thing to think that the mysterious Fairy of Shadowless City and the Overlord had something going on. But if the Overlord killed the Lady D and wanted to make the mysterious Fairy of Shadowless City official, this didn't seem like something the Overlord would do. That was too much. Furthermore, if compared, the Imperial Lady's appearance, strength, and boldness were all above the mysterious Fairy of Shadowless City. Abandoning the beautiful jade that was the monarch's wife, he chose the stone that was the mystic Fairy of Shadowless City. Only an idiot would make such a decision, right? To be honest, I don't want to believe that the Overlord is such a person, but the truth is. The person at the next table shook his head and sighed. "Just wait and see. You'll know in a few days." "Is it true That the Empyrean maiden of Shadowless City said it herself? Someone asked. Of course, I heard it with my own ears when she said it to those ladies. That person patted his chest and said, she said that the Imperial Madam is already dead, and she sounded so sure. How could this be false? If it was fake, wouldn't it be exposed when the Emperor's wife appeared? Since the mysterious lady of Shadowless City was so certain, it couldn't be false. The few of them sighed. For a moment, they didn't know what to say and just stared blankly at that person. Whereas Yiqing Luo, who was eavesdropping on the gossip, her face under the veil twitched a few times, although the voices of those people were very soft. Chapter 4053. When did she die? Or was she killed by Dmo Xian personally? The people involved in this topic were all dumbstruck. She told a lie. She had to use numerous lies to cover it up. Mu Qiulan was addicted to lying to others. She even dared to say that she was killed by Dmo Xian personally. She was certain that she was dead. She thought that after she was brought away by the vines, she died in the West Cliff Mountain. That mountain which was filled with yin qi? Even if she was really dead, the title of Imperial Madam would not belong to her, Mu Qiulan. Mu Qiulan was really wishful thinking. Yiqing Luo sneered. Looked like she had to make a trip back to the Qiao residence. Let's see what kind of ridiculous joke Mu Qiulan could come up with. Yiqing Luo threw out a piece of crystal and placed it on the table as she got up and walked out of the inn. Look at that person. The few people who were gossiping at the next table were attracted by a flash of red. They only had time to see that slender back view. Her red dress fluttered, and her temperament was otherworldly. Just a back view made one feel as though she was a nine heavens mysterious lady who had descended. That lady. When was she in this inn? Such an outstanding lady. They actually didn't notice her from the start till the end? Don't you feel that? That back view looks a little familiar? Red dress, otherworldly temperament, nine heavens mysterious lady. Why, I suddenly thought of Imperial Madam? Qiao residence. Mu Qiulan and a few young ladies stood at the entrance of the courtyard as their expressions were distorted and filled with rage. At the entrance of the courtyard stood two upright figures, a man and a woman. The man's expression was grave and stern and rigid. The woman's features were beautiful, elegant and otherworldly. At this moment, both of them raised one hand and blocked the entrance of the courtyard, blocking Mu Qiulan's path. You two lowly slaves. Don't you know who this sacred lady is? How dare you block this sacred lady's path? Mu Qiulan shouted angrily. The woman was expressionless as she replied calmly. This is the Overlord's order. Sacred lady is the Overlord's woman, and your future mistress. The young ladies beside Mu Qiulan straightened their backs as they sneered. The woman's eyes moved slightly but she remained expressionless. Imperial Palace's mistress, there's only Qing Luo alone. You. Hearing the name Yiqing Luo, Mu Qiulan's expression sunk. Then he sneered and raised his head, revealing an arrogant smile. You're just a small secret guard of the Overlord. What right do you have to interfere with the Overlord's decisions? That's right, who do you think you are? Believe it or not, once the Holy Maiden becomes the Emperor's wife, the first person she will target is you. Get out of the way. The Holy Virgin is going to find His Majesty now. A few young misses clamored, pushing and shoving, wanting to escort Mu Qiulan out of the courtyard. The woman who intercepted him didn't move at all, and her expression didn't change in the slightest. I'm not qualified, and neither are you. The few of them pushed and shoved, but he still couldn't leave the courtyard. The young ladies also knew that this seemingly delicate and elegant woman in front of them was not weak at all. They were afraid that they would not be able to gain any advantage. Mu Qiulan's expression darkened. She felt that she had lost her dignity in front of Lord Dizun's subordinates. She stared at the woman for a long time. Mu Qiulan's lips suddenly curled upwards, revealing a cold smile as she ridiculed. This sacred lady knows that your relationship with Yiqing Luo isn't bad, but some things, you have to accept the reality. Yiqing Luo she is already dead. Chapter 4054. Mu Qiulan couldn't help but cover the corner of her mouth when she saw that the effect had been achieved. She chuckled. The person you want to curry favor with is no longer in this world. What's the point of pretending to be loyal? Humans should learn to be smarter and choose a good tree to nest in. If you curry favor with the wrong person, the consequences won't be light. Mocking words entered her ears one after another. The woman's gloomy face grew uglier. She clenched her fists. When she looked up again, her beautiful eyes were filled with endless coldness. She moved her fingers, and the wind from her palm slammed down on Muchiolan. Swish! The violent wind howled. Muchiolan didn't expect the woman to dare to make a move. The palm fell. No matter how fast her reaction was, that delicate cheek was also brushed by the wind from the palm. Bright red blood rolled down her face. Muchiolan let out a shrill scream and covered her face with her hands. The woman's palm missed, but she didn't intend to stop. She raised her hands again, and profound energy shot out. But, before the palm could land on the ground, her wrist was suddenly grabbed by a hand. He stopped her attack. That wide palm carried a familiar warmth. The woman didn't need to look up to know who stopped her. Beiyuan. The man's deep voice sounded. He pulled the woman's hand and pressed it down. Don't mess around. That's right. The two people guarding the courtyard entrance were Tang Beiyuan and Lang Lixian. Her fiancé grabbed her wrist, and he had a don't mess around expression on his face. Tang Beiyuan's heart hurt as if it was being pricked by a needle. Seeing Tang Beiyuan being restrained, the few rich young ladies who were standing in front of Muchiolan, but felt guilty, heaved a sigh of relief. Muchiolan covered her face and looked at Tang Beiyuan with hatred and ruthlessness. What are you staring at? Believe it or not, I'll dig out your eyes. Tang Beiyuan's heart was burning with anger. Her arms struggled hard against Lang Lixian, and she vented her anger on Muchiolan. Lang Lixian held her hand even tighter, his face expressionless, and he didn't move. He was probably sure that Lang Lixian wouldn't let Tang Beiyuan do anything to him. Only then did Muchiolan relax. Looking at Tang Beiyuan's furious expression, a glint flashed across Muchiolan's eyes. I'll tell you another secret. The Madame D that you've been thinking about is not only dead, but she died in the hands of Lord Dizun. Do you know that? Nonsense. There was no way Tang Beiyuan would believe such nonsense. However, after listening to Muchiolan's confident rumor, Yi Zichen couldn't help but sigh. She couldn't help but want to tear Muchiolan's mouth apart. Lang Lixian, let go of me. Tang Beiyuan struggled, trying to break free from Lang Lixian's imprisonment. Lang Lixian frowned slightly. Don't mess around. Tang Beiyuan's nose turned sour. She did not know if it was Lang Lixian's attitude that had hurt her heart. Lang Lixian's strength was too great, and it hurt her. Muchiolan looked at the interaction between the two people in front of her, and the corners of her mouth curled into a proud smile. She looked at Lang Lixian. This holy lady admires smart people like you. After this holy lady becomes the Madame Dizun, I will definitely put in a good word for you in front of Lord Dizun. Lang Lixian frowned, but he ignored her. Instead, he kept staring at Tang Beiyuan's face. He looked at Tang Beiyuan's red eyes. He pursed his lips and wanted to say something. Suddenly, a clamor of shouting came from not far away. Chapter 40-55. Tang Beiyuan's expression was dark as she glanced at Lang Lixian. After Lang Lixian saw the housekeeper, he let go of her arm, but his body moved a few steps. It stood between her and Muchiolan. It was as if he was worried that she would suddenly attack Muchiolan. The sight of him protecting Muchiolan caused Tang Beiyuan's eyes to sting. She withdrew her gaze and suppressed the sourness in her heart. She took a deep breath and looked at the housekeeper. What happened? Those who are still in without embroiling city have all gathered at the Qiao Manor. They're all asking if Madame D is really dead. And they're all clamoring to see the Empyrean Fairy of Shadowless City. The butler immediately repeated, his face full of anxiety. The patriarch asked me to inform you that he might not be able to suppress it. Mistress is dead. Tang Beiyuan instinctively looked at Muchiolan. Earlier, Muchiolan had said delightfully and confidently. Yi Qinglue was already dead, and he died in the hands of Dmo Xian. How could Muchiolan be so sure that Yi Qinglue was dead? She didn't believe it. How could a lady like Yi Qingluo die so easily? Moreover, the overlord would rather die than to let Yi Qingluo suffer any harm. How could he possibly kill Yi Qingluo with his own hands? This must be Mu Qiulan's doing. Tang Beiyuan's eyes flickered as she looked at the butler. They've heard about the Lady Emperor's death. Why would they want to meet the Empyrean Fairy of Shadowless City? The butler wiped the sweat off his forehead and shook his head. This lowly one doesn't know either. Just as he was speaking, in front of them, about 20 people swarmed toward their courtyard. Walking at the forefront was the gloomy Qiao family head. It was obvious that he was infuriated by these major forces. When Mu Qiulan heard the butler's words, a sense of joy welled up in her heart. Then he saw more than 20 people from various factions rushing over. Moreover, they were all here for the matter of the imperial madam's death. She became even more excited. Who would have thought that the news would spread so quickly? She had purposely brought up the matter of Yi Qingluo being killed by Dmo Xian to the ladies in the morning. At this moment, it had already spread like wildfire. She could finally stand next to the overlord openly. Finally, she could hear everyone respectfully call her Madame D. This position should have belonged to her. As long as he could deal with this group of people in front of him, by then, even if Dmo Xian wanted to settle the scores, in order to maintain the overlord's reputation, he would have to obediently let her be the imperial madam. So what if Yi Qingluo wasn't killed by Dmo Xian? Anyway, Yi Qingluo was already dead. So the dead could not testify. No matter how Dmo Xian explained, he still had to bear the infamy of killing Yi Qingluo with his own hands. As for her, it had already come to this. The Linglong Palace would also give up on her after she lost her virginity to that impostor. She did not expect Dmo Xian to fall in love with her. Therefore, she did not need any feelings. She only needed the identity of the imperial concubine. That was enough. Just as Mu Qiulan was fantasizing about the bright future, Patriarch Qiao and more than 20 people from the major forces walked over. The events in Without Embroiling City came one after another. On top of that, Dizun was in Without Embroiling City. Another old man from the Huangfu family, one of the Heaven Realm's 4 great families, appeared. Chapter 4056. Because of this, those powerhouses who appeared in Mu Qiulan's courtyard all had rather high statuses in the various main cities. Patriarch Qiao. Tang Beiyuan's expression was solemn as she swept a glance at those 20 over people, and kept her emotions as she greeted Patriarch Qiao. Patriarch Qiao nodded and looked at Mu Qiulan with an unfriendly expression. Shadowless City's mysterious young lady. Today the entire Without Embroiling City is discussing a false rumor. May I know if you know about it? His tone was very stiff. It wasn't a question, but he was already certain that this rumor had something to do with Mu Qiulan. Hearing Patriarch Qiao's words, Mu Qiulan kept away the complacency in her eyes as she revealed an astonished expression. What rumor? The overlord was worried that I had suffered a shock in West Cliff Mountain. So he had asked me to stay in the Qiao residence to recuperate properly. I have never left the Qiao residence, so I don't know about the rumors outside. Her words revealed that she had a close relationship with Dmo Xian. Oh, really? Patriarch Qiao naturally didn't believe her. According to what I know, the overlord arranged for you to stay in the Qiao residence, not to let you recuperate. Before the overlord left, he specially instructed me to watch your every move. He paused as his tone was filled with ridicule. This kind of reminder doesn't seem to be because he was worried about you. Mu Qiulan had not expected Patriarch Qiao to directly tear down her stage. Instantly, her exquisite and beautiful face became a little twisted. However, when his gaze swept across the people behind Qiao family head and the various forces, Mu Qiulan suppressed the surging anger in her chest as she raised her head slightly and spoke without any change in expression. This sacred young lady knows that Patriarch Qiao admires Miss Yi very much, so you are unable to accept the overlord's choice. But, since things have already developed to this stage, if Patriarch Qiao still wants to befriend the overlord, then you should see the reality clearly and accept this truth. She didn't reply Patriarch Qiao's words directly. Instead, she intentionally incited the crowd. With just a few words, He was clearly informing the crowd. Patriarch Qiao's words were merely a lie which he intentionally said for Yiqing Luo, reminding everyone again. The truth was right in front of them. If they wanted to befriend the overlord, then they should treat her as the new imperial madam. Perhaps she would also whisper pillow talk to Dizun and the others. It was indeed a little shocking for a woman to say such words. However, he had to admit it. His words struck a chord in the hearts of many people from various forces. The reason why they stayed in Without Embroiling City, wasn't it all for Dizun? Even though Yiqing Luo had painstakingly saved the entire Earth domain at Without Embroiling City's auction. But their focus was still on the Dizun. Initially he thought that if he could get on Yiqing Luo's good side, he would be able to get on the overlord's good side. After all, the Treasures Gathering Hall and the Qiao Estate were like that. But he had not expected Yiqing Luo to have such a strong temperament at such a young age. Regardless of whether it was a temptation or a hint, Yiqing Luo didn't have any intention to deepen the relationship with them. Yiqing Luo's attitude was the overlord's attitude. For them, Yiqing Luo was just like the overlord. They were all pressuring existences. Now the emperor's wife had changed. It wasn't a bad choice. At least when facing the Empyrean Fairy of Shadowless City, they wouldn't have the feeling of MT Tai pressing down on them until they couldn't breathe. Most importantly, the Empyrean Fairy of Shadowless City was different from Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo had no desires and no conditions could tempt her. Chapter 40-57. As long as the conditions were set, Shadowless City's mysterious envy would definitely be able to reach a consensus with them. It would be much more convenient for them to make any transactions. Very quickly, some powerhouses asked in a probing manner. I heard that Imperial Madam had died 3 days ago. Is this news true? How did you all? Mu Qiulan's beautiful eyes widened as though she was extremely shocked as she subconsciously opened her mouth. The words were at the tip of her tongue when she seemed to have thought of something as she forced a smile. Where did you hear this news from? Imperial Madam she. How could she possibly be dead? Her expression, in addition to her words, that was an act of trying to cover up. Everyone's eyes flashed past a sliver of understanding as they continued asking. Since Imperial Madam is fine, then why? Haven't we seen her for the past few days? If I didn't guess wrongly, these few days, the people at the auction house seem to be secretly searching for Imperial Madam. And the Overlord has also not been seen for the past few days. One must know that previously, Yiqing Luo was able to create new topics every day, making everyone discuss. But these 3 days, Yiqing Luo seemed to have suddenly disappeared. There was no news at all. Following that was today. The news of Yiqing Luo's death suddenly spread. This made the crowd doubt this rumor. The few powerhouses started another round of questioning. Mu Qiulan's face turned pale from the questioning as her gaze kept shifting back and forth on the crowd, as though she was panicking. After some time, she pursed her red lips tightly. I believe everyone is very clear that Imperial Madam doesn't like me. The Overlord had arranged for me to stay in the Qiao residence these few days, and didn't ask Imperial Madam to find trouble with me, so. The questions you asked, I don't know. The more Mu Qiulan said that, the more everyone felt that. The news that they had heard was true. All of their gazes towards Mu Qiulan had some changes. If Mu Qiulan really became the next Imperial Madam, now was the time to hug Mu Qiulan's thigh. Everyone's gazes met and Patriarch Qiao saw it all. His expression instantly sunk terrifyingly. Hey, what a good don't know. Shadowless City's mysterious envy. You're in my Qiao residence. Do you really think I don't know everything that you've done? He sneered in anger. You know better than anyone else how the news of Madame D's death got out, and made everyone know about it. A dark light flashed across Mu Qiulan's drooping eyes. The people from the various superpowers did not care about this at all. How did the news get out? It was not important. The important thing was this news true? Naturally, they knew very well that as the Empyrean Lady of Shadowless City, Mu Qiulan, who was related to the Overlord and had the potential to become the next Overlord's wife, how could she be a naive person? Mysterious maiden of Shadowless City. We only want to know if this matter is true or false. Also, we also heard that the Emperor's wife was killed by the Overlord. Is this true? Mu Qiulan pondered for a moment. With Patriarch Qiao around, she could forget about pretending to be a White Lotus and removing all the blame from herself. Originally, they thought that by pretending not to know anything and luring everyone to believe that Yiqing Luo was really dead. At that time, even if Dizun were to blame him, he would not be able to do so. She could still feign ignorance. He was also innocent, and he had been dragged into this inexplicably. Chapter 40-58. Mu Qiulan raised her head slightly, revealing her exquisite and beautiful face to the crowd. The expression on her face was no longer the flustered and stubborn expression of hiding the secret for Dmo Xian. Instead, her red lips curled into a proud smile. Yes, I can confirm that the Imperial Madam is dead. She slowed down her tone and enunciated each word clearly. Every word was like a clap of thunder, striking the hearts of the crowd. Nonsense. Tang Beiyuan's eyes reddened as she berated him. Mu Qiulan glanced at her, her smile widening. I was there at the scene, and I saw the Imperial Madam breathe her last with my own eyes. She paused, then smiled maliciously. You don't know how desperate Madame D was at that time. Unfortunately, she didn't even have the chance to struggle. She died just like that. Mu Qiulan. Tang Beiyuan gritted her teeth. Her eyes were filled with anger as she spat out Mu Qiulan's name. She clenched her fists tightly, as if she was going to charge at Mu Qiulan in the next second. However, Lang Lixian was the first to grab her arm and pull her into his embrace. If this was any other time, Tang Beiyuan would definitely blush and her heart would palpitate. She would be so mesmerized that she would forget all her unhappiness and worries, and be filled with hope for their relationship once again. But at this moment, Tang Beiyuan felt cold all over. It was a bone-chilling coldness. She was angry. He was angry because of Yiqing Luo. It was not just loyalty to the matriarch. It was also because he cared about Yiqing Luo as a friend. However, Lang Lixian did not understand her. Clearly, he had believed Mu Qiulan's words. He really felt that there was a special relationship between Mu Qiulan and Lord Dizun. Therefore, as Dizun's most loyal secret guard, Dizun had no choice but to obey. He would protect Dizun unconditionally. No matter how much she hated Mu Qiulan, no matter how angry or frustrated she was, none of them could resist a single order from His Majesty. She probably didn't exist in his heart. Her insistence, her wishful thinking, in the end, felt like a joke. She let out a low laugh. His anger, and his desire to vent it on Mu Qiulan, all died down in an instant. She lowered her eyes, and silently leaned into Lang Lixian's embrace. His face was expressionless. The person in his arms quieted down, so quiet that it was a little strange. Lang Lixian frowned and looked down at Tang Beiyuan. Tang Beiyuan lowered her head, so her expression could not be seen. Lang Lixian only felt a little strange. Just as he was about to say something, he was interrupted by Mu Qiulan's voice. Very angry? Very angry? Do you want to kill me? Hee hee. So what if you kill this mysterious fairy? You still can't hide the truth, can you? Mu Qiulan's eyes were filled with a smug and flamboyant smile. He seemed to have seen through the relationship between Tang Beiyuan and Lang Lixian. She even deliberately provoked him. Furthermore, with that loyal dark guard around, even if you want to kill this mysterious fairy, you will have to see if he agrees or not. Tang Beiyuan didn't even lift her head. His emotions did not fluctuate or change in the slightest. She was so quiet. Lang Lixian couldn't help but lower his head to look at the person in his arms. His brows creased even tighter. Tang Beiyuan didn't respond and Mu Qiulan felt that it was pointless, so she hurriedly continued to bring the topic back to Yiqing Luo. This mysterious fairy has already said what you want to know. Now, what other questions do you have? Chapter 40-59. It was one thing to hear that Madame D was dead. It was a completely different matter to hear the relevant person admit it with his own ears. It felt completely different, okay? Shadowless City's Empyrean fairy's tone was so certain that she did not seem to be lying. After all, This kind of lie was too easy to expose. Moreover, if this matter was really fake, the overlord and Yi Qingluo should have come out at the first instance to refute the rumors. Mu Qiulan raised her chin slightly and smiled haughtily. Every single rumor that has been spread out is true. She paused for a moment and deliberately slowed down her speech. Word by word, she said, including the news that Di Foreign was killed by Di Zun. Everyone's expression changed unpredictably again. All of them were so shocked that they didn't know what to say. Madame Di was dead. Moreover, Di Zun had personally killed him. She had seen how much the overlord doted on Madame Di. No one could imagine the scene of His Majesty attacking Madame Di. Have you ever wondered who could kill a woman as powerful as the emperor's wife, who had treasures and terrifying battle pets, without giving her a chance to struggle? Mu Qiulan's smile widened. That's right. Mu Qiulan's smile widened. There was no one else but the overlord. This was the thought that flashed through everyone's mind. Looks like the rumors that he had heard were all true. I didn't expect the overlord to be such a heartless person. He was actually so ruthless. How heartless of him to turn hostile. But thinking about it, it made sense. People like Di Zun, who were high and mighty. Who in the world could blaspheme him? In his eyes, women were merely an external object. Of course, none of this had anything to do with them. The overlord's gossip was not something that people like them could guess. I see. I didn't expect His Majesty to value Lady Mystic Fairy so much that he even killed His Majesty. Oh, even Lady Night for her. Ever since Miss Yi used the overlord's substitute secret guard to impersonate the overlord, I felt that Miss Yi doesn't deserve the overlord at all. Lord Mystic Fairy, congratulations. Looks like you'll be able to fulfill your wish in a few days. It was just a short period of silence. Immediately, people began to flatter him. With smiles on their faces, they cupped their fists at Mu Qiulan. She even moved closer to Mu Qiulan's direction. More than 20 people came over. At least more than half of the people gathered around Mu Qiulan. As for the other half, they were thinking about the consequences. Some of them were unable to believe that the overlord was such a fickle and heartless person, and were unable to believe that Yi Qingluo, such a strong and confident person, would die so silently. Flattering words and Mu Qiulan's complacent laughter. All of them were provoking Patriarch Qiao. These people had no bottom line. No conscience at all. Inhumane. Yi Qingluo was considered as their savior. He was the benefactor who had saved the entire land. These people were indifferent towards Yi Qingluo. Human nature is cold and heartless. Mu Qiulan's complacent and arrogant voice rang in his ears. Well said. Once I become the empress, I will do my best to fulfill all of your requests. There's no need to thank me. Since the overlord has chosen this mysterious fairy should be the overlord's right-hand man, and help the overlord manage the imperial palace. Her complacent tone made it clear that she had already regarded herself as the future mistress of the imperial palace. Chapter 4060. That clapping sound at this juncture was extremely attention-grabbing. Everyone looked towards the direction of the sound. Immediately after, they saw a dazzling fiery figure appearing in front of everyone's eyes. The young lady clapped her hands as she walked in elegant steps, slowly walking closer. Her dress fluttered like a burning flame, even though the person who came was wearing a veil, concealing that devastatingly beautiful face. But when everyone saw the young lady in front of them, the first figure that appeared in their minds was Yi Qingluo. In this world, there was no one who could wear a simple red dress without any patterns, in such a dazzling manner. It made one totally unable to shift their gaze away. That was what everyone thought. Mu Qiulan was the same. The moment she saw the red-robed young lady appear, Mu Qiulan's mind instantly went blank. As though there was a buzzing sound reverberating in her ears. Her entire body turned stiff and cold, unable to move. It was Yi Qingluo. How could she possibly appear? Wasn't she already dead? She saw Yi Qingluo being taken away by the vines with her own eyes. She saw the overlord leaving the West Cliff Mountain alone, with a heavy and sorrowful expression. Obviously, after searching for Yi Qing Luo, there was nothing. What? Why was Yi Qing Luo still alive? This was impossible. Numerous voices kept colliding in Mu Qiulan's mind. It was as if something was about to explode in his mind. You are. One of the forces stared at the young lady in front of them, taking the lead to break the deadlock. Everyone then reacted, as pairs of curious and puzzled gazes swept towards Yi Qing Luo. Who am I? The young lady's clear voice, obviously carrying a smile, but when it entered everyone's ears, it made one's back inexplicably chilly. It was as if something cold was strangling his heart. The young lady was still laughing in a low voice. Her laughter was pleasing to the ears, like pearls falling onto a plate, extremely pleasant to listen to. But every single sound was like a huge rock, falling onto everyone's hearts. Actually, I'm also very curious, who should I be now? The young lady continued speaking, as her slender fair fingers gently placed on her veil, lightly tapping her pink lips, as her smile deepened. After all, in everyone's mouth, I'm already a dead person. The young girl's words were like a clap of thunder, striking everyone's hearts. Pairs of doubtful eyes turned into shock and disbelief. It was also faintly mixed with fear and panic. Yi, Madam Emperor. Everyone's hearts trembled. The young girl tilted her head, and a strand of her fine black hair fell over her shoulder, making her look like a fairy who had mistakenly entered the mortal world. However, the words that came out of her mouth were chilling. Imperial Madam? Isn't the Madam D that everyone is looking for over there? How can a dead person like me bear the responsibility? She pointed at Mu Qiulan, who was standing there stiffly. Everyone couldn't help but shiver, their eyes filled with shock. This was absolutely Yi Qing Luo herself. Other than the Overlord and Yi Qing Luo, no one could make them feel so pressured. Those people from the forces who had flattered Mu Qiulan just now felt a chill run down their spines, and their bodies began to tremble. What they just said, apparently it had been transmitted to Yi Qing Luo's ears. Oh no, they shouldn't have listened to Mu Qiulan's one-sided words just now. This time round he had completely offended Yi Qing Luo. Chapter 4061. You stop trying to mystify us here. The young ladies beside Mu Qiulan heaved a sigh of relief as they pointed at the young lady and reprimanded her. Just a second ago, they were still enjoying everyone's fawning. The next second, they had become like a plague, an existence which they couldn't avoid. Mysterious Fairy had said that Yi Qing Luo, that slut, was already dead. She was killed by the Overlord personally. The person in front of them was absolutely not Yi Qing Luo. Someone must be trying to mystify us. Hearing the young lady's angry rebuke, Mu Qiulan also regained her senses from the shock. She froze her icy cold body as her hands clenched tightly. A pair of beautiful eyes stared at the young lady without blinking. She took a deep breath, trying her best to maintain the calmness in her voice as she said word by word. Who are you? What's your motive for impersonating the Overlord? She is definitely not Yi, not Overlord. Even the Overlord can be impersonated. Not to mention the Overlord. Someone must have found out about the news of the Overlord's death, and intentionally came to impersonate the Overlord. The young ladies beside her immediately echoed in agreement. But the crowd didn't make a sound. Most of them hoped that what Mu Qiulan and the others said was true. If the person in front of them was impersonating the Overlord, their earlier act of hugging her thigh could still be saved. But logic and intuition told them clearly. The red-robed young lady in front of them wasn't fake. Ha! A light laugh was heard from under the veil. The young lady's brows rose as her long and narrow eyes outlined a seductive arc, unparalleled, peerless elegance. Every action, every smile, every frown were endlessly enchanting. Her footsteps moved slightly, step by step, as she walked towards Mu Qiulan. The surrounding people swiftly moved aside, opening up a pathway. Seeing the young lady getting closer to her, Mu Qiulan's entire body turned stiff, totally unable to move. The muscles on her entire body were so taut as though they were about to explode. Her eyes were filled with a terrified expression. What are you trying to do? You dare to make a move on me? The Overlord will not let you off. Mu Qiulan's voice was trembling. Yi Qingluo's lips curled lightly. Just this bit of guts and you dare to fabricate nonsense, playing with people's hearts? What nonsense? Everything I've said is true. You imposter. What intentions do you have by pretending to be the imperial madam? Even now Mu Qiulan still persisted in her dream. Yi Qingluo got closer to Mu Qiulan and shocked her so much that she staggered a few steps backwards. His body was stiff and taut due to nervousness. This large movement made her unable to stand steadily, and she fell to the ground. A few young ladies immediately screamed and helped her up. Yi Qingluo squinted at her contemptuously as her eyes were filled with ridicule. Then, "What does mysterious maiden think? Do I feel at ease?" Mu Qiulan swallowed a mouthful of saliva. The fear and panic in her eyes were obvious. Whatever mysterious maiden has to say, just go ahead and say it, I'm listening. Yi Qingluo smiled lightly. Mu Qiulan's face was pale. Under the gaze of the pair of eyes that seemed to be able to see through one's heart, she suddenly let out a shrill scream. She hugged her head, squatted down on the ground, and began to wail loudly. Clearly, his psychological defense had been completely destroyed. Yi Qingluo gave a light scoff as she slowly pulled away from Mu Qiulan. Whereas at this moment, Tang Beiyuan, who was nestled in Lang Lixian's arms, hung her head unmoving as she stared blankly at that red figure, as her eyes were filled with faint joy. Mistress, mistress. Chapter 4062. Yi Qingluo turned to Tang Beiyuan smilingly as she stretched out both her hands. Yuan, it's me. Tang Beiyuan's red lips pursed tightly as her eyes overflowed with joy. She immediately jogged over and pounced towards Yi Qingluo. But before she could get close to Yi Qingluo, her arm was grabbed by someone once again. Lang Lixian grabbed her wrist as his grave and stern face was solemn. Yuan, she is the imperial madam, don't be unreasonable. Tang Beiyuan's footsteps halted as her face turned slightly pale as she glanced sideways at the hand he was grabbing. That smiling face froze on her face. Let go. Her lips pursed even tighter. Lang Lixian frowned. You're angry? Tang Beiyuan suddenly laughed as she raised her head slightly and sneered at the man's solemn handsome face. Her smile was full of sarcasm. You have always paid attention to the occasion, but now you're holding me like this. I'm afraid it's not good. Yuan. Lang Lixian's brows creased even tighter as his solemn expression added a heavy pressure for no reason. Tang Beiyuan swung her hand. Let go. Lang Lixian took a look at Yi Qingluo and looked down at Tang Beiyuan. Don't mess around. After this matter is over, tell me whatever anger you have in your heart. I'm not angry. Tang Beiyuan's red lips curled slightly as her other hand held onto Lang Lixian's hand as she tried to pry off his fingers. My relationship with the imperial madam doesn't need Hall Master Lang to worry about it. In order to maintain Hall Master Lang's upright and plain-spoken image, Hall Master Lang better not tug at me. Lang Lixian's dark eyes flashed a trace of astonishment. Just as he was about to say something, a fair hand swayed slightly in front of his eyes. A fair, slender hand rested on Tang Beiyuan's wrist. Lang Lixian raised his eyes and met with the young lady's bright eyes and white teeth. Hall Master Lang, you're hurting her. Yi Qingluo smiled as she spoke. In her smile, there was a trace of cold glint. Lang Lixian's pupils contracted as he swiftly moved his palm away and lowered his eyes as he respectfully greeted. Imperial Madam. Just like what Beiyuan said, Hall Master Lang doesn't need to worry about my relationship with Beiyuan. Yi Qingluo smiled as she pulled Tang Beiyuan into her arms. The woman's slender body was somewhat cold. Yi Qingluo gently caressed the back of Tang Beiyuan's hand, and then raised her eyes to look at Lang Lixian. Hall Master Lang, you can't treat your lover like a subordinate. Otherwise, why would you need your lover to do? Saying that, she pulled Tang Beiyuan and walked to the other side. Perhaps Beiyuan's status made Lang Lixian. Or it Lang Lixian didn't dare to ignore her. Lang Luo's words. Yi Qingluo pulled Tang Beiyuan as they walked a few steps further away. She then raised her eyes and shot a glance at Lang Lixian. You like him very much? The smile on Tang Beiyuan's face froze for a moment. She quickly adjusted her emotions and changed the topic with a smile. I knew you would be fine. Yi Qingluo didn't force her to reply as she raised her hand and tucked the stray strands of hair behind her ear before smiling. Aren't you afraid that I'm an imposter? Even Xian is impersonated, not to mention me? Yi Qingluo replied with a smile. Tang Beiyuan replied. The real can't be faked and the fake can't be real. If you carefully identify, how could you not recognize the fake? Tang Beiyuan said. The real can't be faked, and the fake can't be real. If you look carefully, how can you not recognize the fake? Both of them had no misgivings and didn't conceal their conversation at all. The two of them had no misgivings and didn't conceal their conversation at all. Everyone could clearly hear the hidden meaning behind his words. Wasn't this mocking them for treating an imposter as the real overlord? Chapter 4063. Everyone was drenched in cold sweat. Their minds were in a blank state from fright. There was no way for them to calm down and think about how to make Yi Qingluo believe them. You're back. Do you want to go over to the Treasure Exchange Hall to take a look? These few days, the boss of Treasure Exchange Hall is very worried about you. Tang Beiyuan looked at the surrounding people from various powerhouses who had a terrified look on their faces, and opened her mouth to suggest. With these people around, there were many things which were not convenient for them to say. Speaking of Treasure Exchange, Yi Qingluo nodded slightly. Naturally, I have to go over to take a look. Pei Sheng, that fellow, we agreed to head over to the Heaven Realm after the first Treasure Exchange auction, but he still hasn't gone over till now. Old Master Huangfu probably thought that I'm not willing to let him go. That day, they also went over to West Cliff Mountain and brought Shadowless City's mysterious maiden back. Tang Beiyuan explained. Shadowless City's mysterious maiden kept saying that the internal area of West Cliff Mountain is extremely dangerous, and going in would mean death, so they're all very worried about you. Tang Beiyuan smiled. These few days, Pei Sheng and the others frequently came over to the Qiao residence to inquire about Yi Qingluo and DMO Xian's whereabouts. Adding on to the fact that Zhou Mo and Kitty Li were by the side chatting with them. Her relationship with Pei Sheng and the others was considered not bad. When Yi Qingluo heard that, her expression changed slightly. Let's head over to the Treasure Exchange Hall now. They already knew that she had met with danger in West Cliff Mountain, and the situation was perilous. She had gone missing for another 3 days. Adding on to the fact that the news of her death had spread like wildfire, Pei Sheng and the others were definitely getting more and more worried. Yi Qingluo took a look at Mu Qiulan, who was hugging her head as she squatted on the ground, totally disregarding her. She raised her eyes and looked at Qiao family's patriarch. I'll have to trouble Qiao family's patriarch to put in some effort over here. I'll head over to the Treasure Exchange Hall to report that I'm safe. After reminding her, she pulled Tang Beiyuan and was about to leave. Those people from various powerhouses who were crowding around immediately panicked. All of them immediately went up and carefully begged for mercy. Imperial Madam, it's us who have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai and listen to that slut's slanderous words. Earlier. What we said earlier wasn't our original intention. Imperial Madam is magnanimous, please don't be calculative with us. Right. Madam, it's all that bitch's fault. She used His Majesty to fool us. We had no choice but to say those words. Madam D, please spare us, please spare us. Trembling cries for mercy rose and fell one after another. Those powerhouses who were crowding around Mu Qiulan earlier had all gathered in front of Yi Qingluo. But due to Yi Qingluo's imposing manner, he didn't dare to get too close. Their eyes were filled with pleading and longing. They had stayed in without embroiling city, because they wanted to build connections with the divine sovereign. Now that he had offended Madame D, he had offended His Majesty. If the main family found out, 3 layers of their skin would probably be peeled off. Thinking of the consequences, everyone trembled even more. Even his legs were trembling. Yi Qingluo was surrounded so tightly that not even a drop of water could seep through. She could only stop her footsteps as her charming eyes lightly swept past the circle of people in front of her. Her eyes were calm and indifferent. He didn't seem to have any special emotions. The more arrogant she appeared, the colder she became. Everyone's heart was beating more and more restlessly. Yi Qingluo's gaze was cold and chilly. After sweeping past everyone, Her pink lips moved as she spoke in a lukewarm tone. Your mouths are on your body. I don't care what you want to say. Make way. Chapter 4064. Immediately, someone directly knelt down with a plunk sound. I know I'm in the wrong. Imperial Madam, please forgive my rudeness. Our powerhouses in future will definitely follow the Overlord's lead. That was a young man who looked like he was in his 20s. His face was filled with fear. To tell the truth, Yi Qingluo wasn't too interested in these people. From the bottom of her heart, she had no intention to get involved with any powerhouses. They fawned on Mu Qiulan and belittled her actions, but she didn't mind at all. But apparently, these cultivators who were feeling guilty were afraid that Yi Qingluo would take revenge on them because of this. Yi Qingluo felt that it was rather funny. They were obviously a bunch of elites who lived in the upper class. But they were easily incited by others. Like these powerhouses, she couldn't even be bothered about them. Imperial Madam. I was also forced. You can't do this. I've already apologized. I've already knelt on the ground to beg you. Why won't you forgive me? We were also forced to do this. Not of our own will. Everything is that slut's. That young man was kowtowing hard as he spoke. His entire face was filled with malevolence and distortion. Many powerhouses frowned when they heard this young man's words. They could tell that this was absolutely a small powerhouse which couldn't be shown in public. But no one stopped him. They allowed the young man to kneel on the ground and kowtow to beg for mercy. This was also everyone's way of using this young man to test Yi Qingluo's attitude. Yi Qingluo didn't express any attitude, but Tang Beiyuan, who was standing by the side, laughed out angrily. Forced? Who forced you? Who put a knife on your neck, forcing you to hug Mu Qiulan's thigh? Forced to do this? Stop joking, all right? Why are you the ones who were forced to do this? Then, where are those people? Why don't I see those powerhouses like you, flattering Mu Qiulan? As Tang Beiyuan said that, she pointed to those powerhouses who were standing beside Patriarch Qiao, who had not expressed any opinion from the start. Although these powerhouses stood on Yi Qingluo's side when Mu Qiulan was spouting nonsense, but they didn't stick to Mu Qiulan. Those people who were begging for mercy were reprimanded till their ears turned red as they lowered their heads in shame. Tang Beiyuan continued. Don't say things like apologizing means I will definitely forgive you. I'll kill you and then apologize to you. Do you accept? The young man was speechless from Tang Beiyuan's barrage of words. What? Don't you think I have to forgive you just because I apologize? Tang Beiyuan sneered. The young man blushed and did not answer. Yi Qingluo grabbed Tang Beiyuan's arm and said calmly, forget it, there's no need to waste time on him. Let's go gather the treasures. Tang Beiyuan glanced coldly at the young man, and didn't say a word as she walked forward with Yi Qingluo. Tang Beiyuan retorted. The people from the surrounding forces couldn't help but make way for them. No one dared to speak again. The young man who was kneeling on the ground slowly raised his head, looking at the two silhouettes that were leaving. Tang Beiyuan's sarcastic words rang in his ears. The young man's twisted and hideous face became even more terrifying. His eyes were filled with crazed killing intent. Chapter 4065. The young man's sudden action and that maniacal rage. All of them were caught unprepared. No one had expected that someone dared to make a move. For a moment, no one could react in time. The young man had already closed in on Yi Qingluo. His entire body exploded with a strong, profound glow. Was he going to self-destruct? Everyone realized the young man's intention as their expressions turned horrified. Subconsciously, they dodged to the sides. Upon sensing the young man's violent, profound glow, Tang Beiyuan had already rushed in front of Yi Qingluo in an attempt to help her block the young man's attack. Yuan. At the instance when Tang Beiyuan made her move, Lang Lixian's footsteps moved as he stretched out his hand to hold onto Tang Beiyuan's body. At the same time, the young man's crazy killing intent was right in front of her eyes. Yi Qingluo. What situation was this? Were they all rushing to their deaths? It was just a young man. Was there a need to be afraid that she couldn't evade? The two of them were blocking in front of her. It limited her damage output, all right. Just at the instant when the young man pounced over, a loud bang was heard as a heavy object landed on the ground. All of a sudden, an arc flashed before everyone's eyes, and something was sent flying backward. That heavy object fell heavily onto the ground with a miserable shriek. Dust filled the air as it slowly revealed the young man who was lying on the ground with a face filled with pain. And what attracted everyone's attention was a tall figure stood in front of the young man. His purple robe billowed, and as his sleeves fluttered, the air waves surged violently, emitting a majestic and powerful aura. Overlord, Overlord. Everyone's legs turned into jelly as they looked at the man high above as their hearts suddenly tightened. Overlord. The young man who was lying on the ground raised his head with a face filled with fear, trying to see the person's face clearly. But just at the instant when he raised his head, his chest felt as though it was on fire. A large mouthful of blood spurted out from his mouth. Following that, something seemed to be surging within his body. A loud bang was heard. His body suddenly exploded. Blood splattered and flesh splattered. Everyone held their breaths in shock by this scene. As for the man standing by the side, his peerlessly handsome face was icy cold, without any change in his emotions. No matter how the flesh and blood splattered in all directions, she had never touched a man. Xian. Then, a clear and sweet voice rang out. The man, who seemed to be covered in frost, melted like ice and snow. His entire person became gentle. He turned around to look at the girl. The cold lines on the man's face softened. It was just a simple emotional change. Everyone could feel it. How much did the Overlord care about Yiqing Luo? In this world, probably only Yiqing Luo alone could affect the Overlord's emotions. How could they be so stupid to believe Mu Qiulan's words? To believe that Lord Dizun would personally kill Imperial Madam? Why didn't you wait for me at the inn? Why did you run over here alone? Dmo Xian hugged the young lady's petite figure as he gently caressed her hair. Yiqing Luo glanced sideways at Mu Qiulan, who was squatting on the ground, hugging his head, as her brows rose with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Here to see your little lover. What little lover? Dmo Xian didn't care how many pairs of eyes were watching them as he bent down and bit her lips. My little lover is only you. Chapter 4066. Yiqing Luo was just teasing, but it made everyone's hearts lift up. Those powerhouses who originally hugged Mu Qiulan's thighs were even more terrified. They were afraid that Yiqing Luo would expose them in the next second. But after Yiqing Luo said that, she only leaned into Dmo Xian's arms and didn't say another word. Dmo Xian followed Yiqing Luo's gaze as he calmly shot a glance at Mu Qiulan. There wasn't a single bit of warmth in his deep eyes. His thin lips moved slightly as his calm voice rang. Keeping her alive is because you want her alive. If you don't like her, just kill her. Dmo Xian's voice wasn't loud, but he was the man who attracted the most attention. Even though his voice wasn't loud, everyone held their breaths in concentration as they listened attentively. They wanted to find out Dmo Xian's attitude. After hearing this sentence, those powerhouses cultivators who believed Mu Qiulan's words earlier all turned pale. Overlord. Suddenly, Mu Qiulan, who was hugging her head squatting on the ground, suddenly raised her head and looked at Dmo Xian as her voice trembled. How could you? How could you be so heartless? Didn't like her, just kill her? In the Overlord's heart, what was she? Mu Qiulan looked at Dmo Xian in a daze as her eyes were filled with resentment and infatuation. Actually, towards Dmo Xian, other than his distinguished identity which attracted her, she truly liked him as a person. Why could he be so gentle towards Yiqing Luo? But he couldn't give her this love? If that Overlord who was gentle to her and wanted to pledge his love to her was real, how good would that be? Mu Qiulan's thoughts were written clearly on her face, especially that blatant look in his eyes, staring straight at Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian's expression sunk. Yiqing Luo's figure moved slightly as she blocked in front of Dmo Xian, and blocked Mu Qiulan's vision. Her lips curled into a smile as her expression was calm as she met Mu Qiulan's vengeful gaze and spoke calmly. Heartless? From the start, you're hugging an imposter, just your wishful thinking. You and Xian. Don't seem to have any feelings, so how can you say that you're heartless? It's all your fault, it's all your fault. Mu Qiulan screamed hysterically. If it wasn't for you, how could I have been fooled by an imposter? It's you, it's you. Yi Qingluo scoffed lightly. He ignored Mu Qiulan. Mu Qiulan's mental defenses had obviously collapsed completely. Even her consciousness was in a mess. He was on the verge of going crazy. Now he had already dug out what she wanted everyone to hear from her mouth. There was no longer any meaning for Mu Qiulan to exist. She spared Mu Qiulan's life, but it was because of Dmo Xian's reputation. Now Mu Qiulan had personally admitted that the Lord Overlord, who was with her, was an imposter. That was enough. Xian, let's go. Yi Qingluo held Dmo Xian's hand as she turned around and walked out of the courtyard. Naturally, no one dared to stop them and made way for them. As for Mu Qiulan, Yi Qingluo didn't need to specially remind her. There would also be someone to deal with Mu Qiulan. After all, Mu Qiulan's actions today had caused many forces to make the wrong choice. To show his loyalty, how could they possibly let Mu Qiulan off so easily? Whereas on the other side, Yi Qingluo and Dmo Xian's figures were about to disappear around the corner. Tang Beiyuan, who had been nestled in Lang Lixian's arms, finally reacted as she immediately pushed Lang Lixian, trying to chase up to Yi Qingluo's footsteps. Chapter 4067. The man's palm was scorching hot. Tang Beiyuan looked sideways at him. Lang Lixian's face was cold and stern. He said in a deep voice, "Since the Overlord has come, there is no need to follow." Tang Beiyuan pursed her lips and looked up at Lang Lixian. "Oh, then can you let go?" Listening to the woman's cold voice, Lang Lixian frowned in discomfort. "Yuan." He called out Tang Beiyuan's name, but he didn't know what to say. There was a moment of silence. Tang Beiyuan didn't wait for the man to continue. She moved her hand and broke free from the man's restraint. "If there's nothing else, please move aside." "Why are you angry?" Lang Lixian didn't let go. He pulled her in front of him and their eyes met. "What have I done wrong? You should tell me." "Heh." Tang Beiyuan's smile was a little cold and her eyes were a little sore. "You didn't do anything wrong. It's all my fault, so please let go of me. Stop messing around, okay?" Lang Lixian somewhat helplessly pressed his eyebrows. "It's not easy for us to go on a mission together. Good, okay?" Tears welled up in Tang Beiyuan's eyes. Her eyelashes were slightly wet. He also knew. Wasn't it rare for them to be on a mission together? He also knew that they could only be together for a long time when they were on a mission together. He actually knew everything. Tang Beiyuan closed her eyes and said weakly, "I don't want to mess around. I'm really tired. Let go of me. I want to go back to my room and rest." "All right." Lang Lixian didn't hesitate and responded in a calm voice. As he spoke, he loosened his grip. The moment the scorching hot hand left his wrist, Tang Beiyuan's heart felt as if it had been pierced by a needle. The pain was unbearable. She clenched her fists and suppressed the surging emotions in her heart. He was about to turn around and leave. The next moment, her body felt light. She had already fallen into a broad embrace. She was startled and her body stiffened. Above her head, the man's deep and solemn voice floated down. "If you're tired, lie in my arms and rest for a while. I'll send you back to your room." Lang Lixian carried her and walked step by step towards Tang Beiyuan's room. His steps were steady. Tang Beiyuan didn't feel uncomfortable at all when she was nestled in his arms. Her eyelashes fluttered. He looked up at Lang Lixian's chin. He stared for a long time. Finally, she closed her eyes and buried her head in his chest. Treasures Exchange Hall. Yi Qingluo and Dmo Xian had just arrived. He saw Pei Sheng and the others rushing out of the treasure-gathering hall. Lao Lai was still shouting from behind, "Close the door of the treasure-gathering hall first." However, no one paid attention to old Lai. The group of people rushed forward impatiently with anxious expressions. Even when it swept past Yi Qingluo and Dmo Xian, they didn't notice it at all. Instead, it was the expressionless Gui Wu who was following behind Pei Sheng. His eyes moved slightly as his gaze swept past Yi Qingluo and stopped in his tracks. "Sister." Kitty Lee caught a whiff of Yi Qing Luo's scent, and on seeing the young lady standing not too far away, she was looking at her with a light smile. His entire body almost flew over and rushed into Yi Qing Luo's arms. The kitten's eyes were wet with tears. Her hands hugged Yi Qing Luo tightly as her voice trembled. "Sister, you're finally back. You're finally back. I thought you really didn't want me anymore." Chapter 4068. Because of Kitty Lee's cry, the two people who were still rushing ahead stopped in their tracks. Pei Sheng turned back and saw the young lady who was tightly hugged by Kitty Lee. A look of joy appeared in his eyes. He rushed over and stood in front of Yi Qing Luo, looking her up and down with excitement. "Ah, Luo, you're all right, you're back." Yi Qing Luo smiled and nodded. "Yes, I'm fine, I'm back." Where have you been these few days? Why couldn't Kitty Lee sense your presence?" Pei Sheng was so excited that he wanted to hug Yi Qing Luo. But a cold gaze swept past him. His movements suddenly froze. That action of wanting to hug or not, froze on the spot. Very funny. Everyone couldn't help but burst out laughing. Yi Qing Luo took the initiative to lean over and gave him a gentle hug. The action was very fast and not considered close. But when Yi Qing Luo had just pulled away from Pei Sheng, with one hand, he scooped her up and pressed her into his embrace. A somewhat cold gaze fell on her. Yi Qing Luo smiled, circled his neck and directly kissed his face. "Be good." After a perfunctory stroke, Yi Qing Luo looked at Pei Sheng. "I met with some accidents in the western cliff mountain. Xian accompanied me to recuperate these few days. Today I've recovered, so I came over to look for you." "Accidents? Then have you recovered?" Gu Zishi looked at Yi Qing Luo worriedly. "I can take a look for you. I'm fine, really fine, don't worry. Xian is taking care of me, don't worry." Yi Qing Luo shook her head. Gue Wu, who had been silent, stared at Yi Qing Luo. A trace of admiration flashed past his dark eyes. "This time the accident in the western cliff mountain, on the contrary, made you advance to the next level." Yi Qing Luo was slightly stunned. Her heart was slightly surprised. She didn't expect Gue Wu to be able to see the change in her aura. Gue Wu's strength. How strong was he exactly? Advanced to the next level? Luo advanced again? What accident did you meet in the western cliff mountain? Pei Sheng asked in surprise. "It's very dangerous over there. If it weren't for Xian, I might have died there, let alone leveling up. So, don't even think about taking the risk." Yi Qing Luo's warning destroyed Pei Sheng's thoughts as she changed the topic with a smile. "How long has it been? Why haven't you gone to the heaven realm? Later, old Master Huangfu will say that I'm not willing to let him go again." Pei Sheng scratched his head. "I'm just worried about you. So many things have happened. How can I go to the heaven realm with peace of mind? Now that I'm fine, you guys should get ready." Yi Qing Luo walked towards the direction of the treasure-gathering exchange as she said, "Go to your maternal grandfather in peace, don't worry about me." Pei Sheng glanced at Gu Zishi. The excitement and joy on her face were gone. He lowered his head, and a dark golden flowing light faintly appeared. "I want to stay in the land for a period of time. After that, I will go to the Huangfu family." "For me?" Yi Qing Luo saw through Pei Sheng's plan and couldn't help but laughed. "What do you think will happen to me? Over at Mu Qiulan's side, she can't stir up any waves. Moreover, everyone is here, so you don't need to worry." Pei Sheng pursed his lips tightly. He had been thinking for a very, very long time during the few days when Yi Qing Luo disappeared. It was Yi Qing Luo's arrival that changed his fate. It was Yi Qing Luo who made him stand up again and pull himself together. Chapter 4069. He was now able to protect the treasures exchange hall and live such a comfortable life. Everything was because of Yi Qing Luo. If anything happened to Yi Qing Luo, he would never be able to forgive himself. He had yet to repay Yi Qing Luo's kindness, so how could he leave the earth realm in peace and head towards the heaven realm to search for his own future? Even if Pei Sheng had grown up. However, the sentimentality in his bones could not be corrected in a short period of time. Yi Qing Luo could tell what Pei Sheng was thinking about with just one look. "After Earth Realm's matters are settled, I will head over to Heaven Realm. Yiqing Luo's lips curled as she laughed lightly. So you and Zishi go over there and wait for me first. Pei Sheng's expression froze. He wanted to say something else. But Yiqing Luo was the first to speak. You guys go over first and make good use of this opportunity. After you've stabilized your footing in the Huangfu family, when I go to the Heaven Realm, you can take care of me, isn't that right? Yiqing Luo's words successfully blocked Pei Sheng's words. Alright, since Luo has said so, don't think too much about it. Gu Zishi held onto Pei Sheng's arm and said gently, if we really want to thank Luo, we can wait for Luo in the Heaven Realm. When Luo reaches the Heaven Realm, we can become her backing. Yes, that's what I mean. Yiqing Luo snapped her fingers. Whether I can do whatever I want in the Heaven Realm in the future depends on you. The minute Yiqing Luo's words came out, it made the surrounding few people couldn't help but burst out laughing. At the same time, in the Qiao mansion, Qiao family had dismissed all the people from those forces. Even the few young ladies who followed Mu Qiulan were forcefully called as guards by Patriarch Qiao and thrown out of the Qiao mansion. After that, he ordered the servants to carry Mu Qiulan back to her room. Mu Qiulan's emotions were very abnormal. He kept hugging his head, screaming and struggling. After all, she was the Empyrean fairy of Shadowless City. When she went berserk, the servants of Qiao Manor were unable to get close to Mu Qiulan at all. Instead, they were severely wounded. In the end, it was Lang Lixian who came forward and directly struck Mu Qiulan with his palm. This palm strike did not knock Mu Qiulan out, but she had lost her strength and collapsed to the ground. Lang Lixian's stern face revealed a trace of astonishment. He was surprised that his palm strike had failed to knock Mu Qiulan unconscious. However, he did not think too much about it. He lifted Mu Qiulan up as if she was a piece of trash and threw her into her room. A hard lock locked the door tightly. Lang Lixian raised his hand. His palm was enveloped in a layer of dark force. That layer of profound energy followed Lang Lixian's hand and slowly fell onto the lock. It formed a protective shield. Hall Master Lang, go and take care of Hall Master Tang first. I will have people look after this place. Qiao family had cupped his hands towards Lang Lixian. Lang Lixian was about to refuse. But, just as the words were about to come out of his mouth, in his mind, Tang Beiyuan's face, which was clearly smiling but was filled with endless sorrow, appeared. There was a dull pain in her heart. He slowly clenched his fist. He looked at the tightly shut door, then looked at the lock that was shrouded in profound energy. Unless someone with a higher rank than him appeared, only then could he open this door. Finally he nodded and replied, then I'll have to trouble Patriarch Qiao. This was Lang Lixian's first time, putting Dmo Xian's instructions second. His heart was filled with thoughts of Tang Beiyuan's face, and that smile at the corner of her mouth, that pierced his heart. But he did not know. Not long after he left for Tang Beiyuan's courtyard, a wisp of black smoke slowly floated into the tightly shut door. Chapter 40-70. In the room, Mu Qiulan laid on the bed. Her entire body was in pain, making her body kept on trembling lightly. Her forehead was oozing with cold sweat. Because of the intense pain, her malevolent expression was distorted to the extreme. Her breathing was very heavy. That palm of Lang Lixian just now could practically take her life. Her entire body was in so much pain that she wanted to faint directly. But she was very clear in her heart. She had no way to faint. Because in the West Cliff Mountain, that medicinal pill which Yiqing Luo threw to her made her consciousness maintain a clear mind forever. Even if she slept, she would not be able to sleep peacefully. She believed. Even if she died now, perhaps they would clearly feel how they were dying bit by bit. Mu Qiulan's heart was filled with hatred. Suddenly, the entire room sunk into a kind of December day atmosphere. The bone-chilling cold made her entire body shiver. You trash! An icy cold voice rang beside her ear. That voice was very pleasant to listen to, but it was wrapped in a deep chill. Hearing it made one shiver even though it wasn't cold. The moment that voice rang, Mu Qiulan, who was originally lying on the bed, almost unable to move, suddenly sat up straight. as her face was filled with terror as she looked in front. It was a sudden movement. Made her body, emitted an intense tearing pain, as though someone had dismantled it, and then reassembled it back together. She was in so much pain that she was drenched in cold sweat, as she panted heavily, but her gaze had always been looking in front. You. In the air, a wisp of black smoke faintly appeared. The smoke curled up, as it revolved and floated. Gradually, a slender figure appeared indistinctly in the black smoke. The black smoke was thick, and that person's face could not be seen clearly. She could only faintly see, under the black smoke. That person's eyes were like a venomous snake. Muchiolan's face was filled with terror, as her hands clutched tightly onto the blanket beneath her. In the black smoke, the figure's lips curled into a cold smile, as his voice was extremely sinister, helping you with all the details, arranging everything properly, and actually managing things to such a state. Tell me, are you a trash? That person's tone was full of mockery and disdain. However, Muchiolan didn't dare to reveal the slightest bit of displeasure. She didn't have her usual lofty and unconvinced demeanor. She shrunk her neck and trembled uncontrollably. I am sorry. I didn't want it to be like this. I didn't want to. In order for you to drive a wedge between God Monarch and that SL*T, he gave you the jade pendant. Now that the jade pendant is gone, their relationship has become even better. That person chuckled as he spoke of the things that Muchiolan had failed to accomplish. His tone was calm, and it did not seem like he was questioning or blaming her at all. But this was the case. The more Muchiolan sensed the approaching danger. He wanted to explain, but his tongue was curled up in fright. His teeth were chattering, and he couldn't utter a single word. Idiot. You can't even recognize the real venerable sovereign, and you still treat an impostor as your true love. You're really stupid. Mentioning this, the man's tone was obviously a little more angry. She suddenly flicked her sleeve. The ball of black smoke swiftly attacked Muchiolan's direction. The smoke instantly wrapped around Muchiolan's neck. It lifted her up into the air. Muchiolan widened her eyes, begging for mercy in fright and unwillingness. That person sneered. As he laughed, the black smoke became thicker and thicker. Chapter 40-71. Hearing that he still had value, Muchiolan's eyes immediately shone with hope. As long as you let me go, I'm willing to do anything for you. As long as she was still useful. He wouldn't have killed her. She could still live. As long as she was alive, she would have a chance to make a comeback. Muchiolan was filled with hope. However, in front of him, shrouded in the black fog, he could vaguely see the corner of that person's lips curled up and that pair of sinister and mocking eyes. She realized something, but he didn't dare to think too deeply about it. In the next instant, that person had already approached with a sinister grin. It was accompanied by a gust of chilly air. You're a mysterious fairy after all. I believe that your death and Xiao Yulu's death will be enough for the palace of Linglong to step in. So go to hell. The man smiled sinisterly. The dark mist shrouding Muchiolan tightened bit by bit. Muchiolan widened her eyes in terror, shaking her head desperately. But how could she have the strength to resist? How could he resist? His pupils dilated and his breathing stopped. Muchiolan could vaguely see a face slowly revealing itself amidst the thick fog. It was a face that was exquisitely beautiful and extremely young. However, when that face grinned at her, his facial features were stiff and unnatural. Treasures Exchange Hall. Under Yi Qingluo's persuasion, Pei Sheng dismissed the idea of staying in the Earth domain. Immediately, Yi Qingluo urged them to make a move. Pei Sheng was confused. Do you need to be in such a hurry? How can I not be anxious? When old man Huangfu left, he instructed you to immediately head to the heaven realm after the first auction. How long has it been? Yi Qingluo replied in a serious manner. In fact, he was worried that something would happen again and drag Pei Sheng down again. After all, if he stayed here for too long, he would definitely die. Old Master Huangfu couldn't help but overthink things. On top of that, Old Man Huangfu was returning to the Huangfu clan ahead of time. Because of Huangfu Fengyan, Old Master Huangfu was filled with guilt towards Pei Sheng. He would definitely arrange everything for Pei Sheng in the heaven realm. If this dragged on any longer, it would only disrupt Old Master Huangfu's plans. Before Old Man Huangfu left, he gave Pei Sheng a jade pendant. That jade pendant wasn't just a token of the Huangfu clan. It was also to open the passage to the heaven realm for Pei Sheng and Gu Zishi. Of course, this was his only chance. Clutching the jade pendant in his hand, Pei Sheng looked at Yi Qing Luo without blinking as he spoke seriously. I will definitely stand firm in the heaven realm. Zishi and I will wait for you in the heavenly realm. Yi Qing Luo nodded. I believe you can do it. I hope by then, I can see your growth. He gave a few more instructions. Yi Qing Luo sent Pei Sheng and Gu Zishi to the heaven realm's passageway. The two figures disappeared along with the passage. Yi Qing Luo then retracted her gaze. She stretched her waist lazily and leaned into Dia Moxian's arms. Another two people are missing. We need to hurry. We also need to head to the heaven realm. As she spoke, she threw a bunch of keys in her hand to Lao Lai. Old Lai subconsciously caught the key and looked at Yi Qing Luo in puzzlement. Sheng and Zishi have left. I'll leave the treasure gathering to you. Yi Qing Luo said it lightly. Old Lai immediately threw the keys in his hand to Gue Wu. I don't know anything and I'm going back to the Hell Palace. What's the use of this treasure-gathering trading hall? He was a man from the Hell Palace. Chapter 4072. Are you silly? Yi Qing Luo rolled her eyes at him. If I were to hand over all the treasures to you, I wouldn't be at ease. Gue Wu glanced at the key that was thrown at him, and dodged to the side. The key was about to fall to the ground. Lao Lai had no choice but to catch the key and hold it in his hand. Then what do you mean? With Treasure Gathering's current reputation, it's not worth it to close the shop. Yi Qing Luo said. Moreover, the treasure gathering is Sheng's blood and sweat, and is also Sheng's obsession. To close it just like that. Although Sheng won't say anything, but in his heart, he will definitely feel upset. She paused for a moment, and then continued. That's why I'm saying, this gathering of treasures, for the sake of camaraderie and profit, can continue to operate. You definitely won't stay in the land for long. Who will care about the treasures that you leave behind? Lao Lai asked. Yi Qing Luo replied. Isn't there still Qiao family? Qiao family? Let the Qiao family manage it? Wasn't this the same as giving the treasure exchange hall to the Qiao family? The key will belong to your underworld palace, while the treasure-gathering trading house will be managed by the Qiao family. Every month the underworld palace will split the profits. Isn't that enough? Yi Qing Luo raised her brows as she looked at Old Lai. Lao Lai's eyes widened. In other words, the Hell Palace and the Qiao family will work together? Under the situation of mutual restriction. Indeed, neither side dared to have any evil thoughts. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled upwards as she smiled at Old Lai. Don't tell me. Hell Palace doesn't want to earn some extra crystals? Old Lai. All right, he thought. Although the underworld palace did not lack crystal stones. If they didn't have any spar, they could still go outside to fight for them. However, this share was the crystals that he had earned himself. What if he couldn't get it outside? He could still snatch his spar. Then it's decided happily. I'll discuss with Patriarch Qiao later. Yi Qing Luo clapped her hands as she made the final decision. Lao Lai had no objection at all. He happily put away the key. Gue Wu shot a glance at Yi Qing Luo. When do you plan to go to the heavenly realm? In the near future. Yi Qing Luo thought for a moment. Mu Qiulan's matter has come to an end and the impostor's matter has also been settled. Let's wait for the balance historian's side to completely confirm that the Earth domain will not suffer any sudden attacks from the Palace of Seclusion during this period of time. A completely different calmness and vicissitudes of life appeared on Gue Wu's cold and handsome face. He seemed to smile. It was a very shallow curve. You really treat the matters of the Earth domain as your own business. Yi Qing Luo shrugged her shoulders as she spread out her hands. No choice. Who asked me and Palace of Darkness to be mortal enemies? Palace of Darkness can't wait to kill me and I can't wait to kill them. This matter concerns Palace of Darkness. So of course I have to treat it seriously. Let's not talk about these things. Zomo's long and narrow almond-shaped eyes lifted, and he leaned over with a smile. The matter of the imposter has been resolved? What I'm more curious about is who exactly is that imposter? As he spoke, he stroked his chin. To be able to imitate the venerable emperor so vividly. TSK, if it wasn't someone familiar, how could he imitate it? Yiqing Luo took a look at Dmo Xian before shifting her vision onto Zhou Mo, who was smiling cheekily. I'm more curious than you to know who that imposter is. What? Didn't they say that the problem with the imposter was solved? You still don't know who that person is? Zhou Mo had an expression of disbelief. Yiqing Luo spread out her hands. He was the one who settled it and refused to tell me who the person who impersonated him was. Chapter 4073. Zhou Mo had just finished his words. Gui Wu, Old Lai and the rest tacitly distanced themselves from him. Even Kitty Li shook her little ears and wagged her tail as she shrank behind Yiqing Luo. Zhou Mo looked around and saw that the few of them had distanced themselves from him. He helplessly spread out his hands. What I asked, isn't it what you want to know? Moreover, what I said was not the truth. The few of them stood a few steps further away. They shook their heads in unison. This was absolutely not what they wanted to know. Don't push the blame to them. Sai, you guys are too. Before he could finish his words, a cold gaze fell onto Zhou Mo. Dmo Xian's face was solemn and cold as he looked at Zhou Mo calmly. His gaze was like ice, very breathtaking. No matter how Zhou Mo ignored it, that gaze followed him like a shadow. Several breaths later, Zhou Mo raised his hand, indicating his surrender. Fine, I won't ask any more, all right? Dmo Xian's cold gaze swept past him and retracted it. Dang. This makes me feel that there's something fishy going on. This sound was extremely soft. It was him who was mumbling. He hadn't finished mumbling. Zhou Mo suddenly let out a miserable ah. His entire body flew out and crashed onto the ground. His limbs were facing the sky as he fell into a state of confusion. His mouth kept on howling, ouch, ouch. That tall man who stood beside the young lady slowly smoothed his sleeves. Purple clouds billowed as invisible profound waves surged. Damn. I can't even complain, do you need to be so cruel? I'm in so much pain. Zhou Mo supported his waist as he stood up. No matter how he howled, the few people who were watching from the side all hid far away, and did not pay attention to him at all. Zhou Mo pressed his chest with a pained look. You bunch of heartless people, succumbing to the tyranny of the overlord. And little wildcat, I'm already injured to this extent, and you don't even feel sorry for me. Kitty Li popped out her little head from behind Yiqing Luo. You're courting death, Kitty won't accompany you. Kitty will stand with sister on brother-in-law's side. Zhou Mo. F***ck. He was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. What should he do? Dmo Xian shot a glance at that handsome fox-like face which was now twisted into a ball as he sneered. Don't say anything that will affect the relationship between this lord and Lil Luo. Or in front of Lil Luo. I was just King kidding. Zhou Mo gritted his teeth. Even jokes won't do. Dmo Xian raised his eyes slightly, his vision fixed on him. His gaze swept over. Zhou Mo was instantly terrified. He shrank his neck and didn't say anything else. This farce had actually eased the atmosphere among the crowd quite a bit. Yiqing Luo smiled as she looked at Zhou Mo, who was still holding onto her waist and pressing onto her chest while stretching out his hand towards Kitty Li, howling as a sliver of helplessness flashed past her eyes. It could be seen that Dmo Xian did not go all out. Zhou Mo didn't suffer any substantial injuries. It was just purposely howling there to attract the attention and concern of a certain cat. She didn't expose him. Instead, she raised her eyebrows and looked at the solemn man beside her. To be honest, she was also very curious. Who was the person who impersonated Dmo Xian? To tell the truth, that impersonator impersonated Dmo Xian. Some of his actions, mannerisms and tone were extremely similar. If it wasn't for the fact that she understood Dmo Xian too well. Between her and Dmo Xian, there was a kind of unknown connection. Chapter 4074. But Dmo Xian didn't seem to want her to know who the other party was. Yiqing Luo raised her eyebrows. Could it be that Zomo's big mouth was right? What kind of unspeakable relationship did the imposter have with him? This thought had just surfaced in his mind. Her body was suddenly pulled by someone, and she fell into the man's broad embrace. Her chin was clasped by the man's slender fingers. She lifted it up forcefully and locked eyes with him. His eyes, as deep as ink, seemed to gather in the vast rain. With a single glance, Yiqing Luo's heart seemed to be bewitched for a moment, as she felt dizzy for a moment. This was a man's face. She really couldn't get tired of it, for the rest of her life. Every time he suddenly flirted with her like this, all of them were able to stir up her maiden heart. You don't believe me? Dmo Xian narrowed his peach blossom eyes, reflecting a dangerous message. He just swept a glance at Yiqing Luo's expression, and he could tell what she was thinking about. Yiqing Luo blinked her long eyelashes. No. Do you want to know who the imposter is? His thin lips curled up. His smile was devilishly charming. It made Yiqing Luo's heart skip a few beats uncontrollably. Her lips felt dry. She coughed and shook her head. No. Dmo Xian slowly loosened his grip on her, but he didn't let go completely. His thin lips curled up and he smiled devilishly. Since you don't want to, then I won't say it. Yiqing Luo. He had fallen for the honey trap again. At the end of the day, he still didn't want to ask about the imposter. He didn't want her to know. She could investigate it herself. Yiqing Luo's idea soon got the chance to execute. That was after treasure gathering and everyone had lunch. Yiqing Luo stayed in the treasure gathering to tidy up some of the more precious items. In case when Hell Palace and Xiao Palace worked together to manage the treasure gathering, there might be some disputes due to benefits. Seeing that Gui Wu, Old Lai and the others were gathering treasures, Dmo Xian then left to settle some matters. Before he left, he specially tugged Yiqing Luo as he instructed seriously. I'll come pick you up 4 hours later. Stay in the treasure gathering obediently and don't go anywhere else. Do you understand? His tone made it seem like he was treating her as a troublemaker. Heh, was she a troublemaker? It was clearly trouble that came to find her, all right? She had always been obedient and never took the initiative to look for trouble, okay? Grievance. Yiqing Luo put on a sour face as she sent Dmo Xian off, and went back into the treasure house. Just before Dmo Xian left for half an incense stick of time, Yiqing Luo was rummaging through the treasure's warehouse. Suddenly, he heard a few soft noises coming from the darkness. She was the only one in the warehouse. Gui Wu and the others were all in the hall calculating the accounts. How could there be other people in this warehouse? Yiqing Luo's expression congealed, and her gaze turned sharp as she quietly approached the direction where the sound came from. Just as he approached, a purple streak of light flashed before his eyes. When he raised his head again, he could only vaguely see a slender figure disappearing before his eyes. Yiqing Luo's eyes sunk as she looked around. He saw that nothing in the warehouse had been touched. She frowned and looked in the direction where the voice disappeared. He quickly caught up with her. That figure was obviously trying to seduce her. When she chased after him, the figure flashed again and disappeared before her eyes. Yiqing Luo's brows creased even tighter. Was this another trick from the secluded palace? Wasn't it over after making use of the King of Darkness the last time? Now they came up with a new trick again. Chapter 4075. She stopped in her tracks, narrowed her eyes, and scanned the surroundings, alertly releasing her perception. Suddenly, her gaze paused. His line of sight was fixed on the purple figure standing under a huge banyan tree not too far away. His luxurious purple robe fluttered in the strong wind like rolling clouds. Especially, his face was peerless and extremely handsome. Just a glance was enough to make one sink into it. But after Yiqing Luo swept a glance, the expression on his face revealed a mocking smile that wasn't a smile. Her half-squinted eyes reflected a piercingly cold light. She retracted her vigilance, crossed her arms over her chest, and looked at that person with ridicule. That person slowly raised his head and met her gaze. Their eyes met. His peach blossom eyes that were as deep as an abyss seemed to be filled with a pool of spring water. His red lips curled upwards. With a hint of demonic charm, he stood on the branch and reached out a hand to her. His voice was deep and gorgeous, extremely sexy. "Little Luo, come here." Yiqing Luo's pupils contracted slightly. The frivolous smile at the corner of his mouth became even wider. She raised her eyebrows and smiled at him. The two of them stared at each other for a long time. The man retracted his hand and smiled helplessly. "As expected, I still can't fool you." Yiqing Luo scoffed lightly. The man's sleeves fluttered as he flew down from the tree and landed in front of Yiqing Luo. That face, which was exactly the same as Dmo Xian's, was reflected in Yiqing Luo's pupils from a close distance. "Do you like to pretend to be Xian so much?" Yiqing Luo smiled faintly. The man lowered his eyes and looked deeply at the young girl in front of him. His eyes were filled with warmth. The look in his eyes made her very uncomfortable. Such a gaze. She really has guts. Dmo Xian looked at her. Just as Yiqing Luo's smile froze, and was about to open her mouth to stop this kind of gaze, she heard the man's low and hoarse voice sound out. "If I can obtain your feelings, I really want to pretend to be him and continue pretending to be him." This kind of confession made Yiqing Luo stunned. What the hell was this? Was this man pretending to be Dmo Xian confessing to her? What kind of godly development was this? Yiqing Luo was stunned. The man looked at her stunned expression and couldn't help chuckling. "He really didn't tell you my identity." That he was definitely referring to Dmo Xian. "Who are you?" Yiqing Luo took a step back. The man's low and deep laughter was very magnetic. That voice was exactly the same as Dmo Xian's. However, the feeling was completely different. The man did not imitate Dmo Xian's expression and posture. He slowly stretched out his hand towards Yiqing Luo. His broad, slender palm was just about to land on Yiqing Luo's cheek. But Yiqing Luo turned her head away, avoiding his hand. The man only smiled, his eyes full of gentleness. "He doesn't want you to know my identity, so he must have his own plans." Yiqing Luo knitted her brows tightly as she felt that smile was inexplicably familiar. "Did we know each other?" The man was silent for a moment, then raised a gentle smile. His dark pupils, when he looked at Yiqing Luo, seemed to be condensed with starlight. "I'm already very happy that you can ask in this way." The man smiled lightly. That pair of shimmering peach blossom eyes curved into an arc bearing this face, which was exactly the same as Dmo Xian, but made a completely different expression from Dmo Xian. This made Yiqing Luo feel very awkward. Although when Dmo Xian faced her, he was also extremely gentle. Chapter 4076. However, the gentleness of the man in front of her came from his very bones. Such gentleness, such a smile. It was very familiar. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased tightly into a bundle. He glared at the man. The man stared at her until he couldn't help but chuckle, his chest heaving up and down. "You want to know my identity so badly?" Yiqing Luo's gaze was sharp as she replied simply, "Yes." "Is it because you're curious about me, or because you're curious about my familiarity?" the man asked with a smile. Yiqing Luo shook her head. "Neither." The man, "Huh? Then, why do you want to know who I am?" Yiqing Luo replied, "I'm just curious, how did you manage to impersonate Xian? You and Xian. What relationship do you have?" The man's smile froze on his face. He had to admit it. Yiqing Luo's sentence was really pricking his heart. He thought that Yiqing Luo was curious about him, so she wanted to know his identity, which was why she followed him here. But who would have thought Yiqing Luo was merely because of Dmo Xian? Because he was able to impersonate Dmo Xian, and had an incomparable understanding of Dmo Xian. That was why she wanted to know his identity. The smile on the man's face gradually revealed some bitterness. He hung his head. Her long black hair cascaded down her back. It concealed the gloom in his eyes. After a long time, the man's slightly hoarse voice came from the hair. "You just need to remember that I like you. I won't hurt you. That's enough." After the man said this, his entire aura was a little weak. He clenched his hands into fists. He seemed nervous. His breathing was also slightly erratic. Furthermore, he swiftly raised his eyes and took a look at Yiqing Luo's expression before swiftly lowering his head. He looked like an innocent young man who had met someone he liked for the first time, and felt shy after confessing. However, after all these actions, Yiqing Luo only felt that it was funny. The corners of her lips curled up into a mocking smile. You like me? Won't hurt me? Should I help you recall? 3 days ago. How did you lure me to the West Cliff Mountain? How did you let the vines bring me to the King of Darkness? The man's shy expression froze on his face. Hearing Yiqing Luo's words, his face paled a little. He opened his mouth to explain. Yiqing Luo laughed lightly again, but there wasn't much emotion in her eyes. The grudge between King of Darkness and me, as a member of the Palace of Darkness, you should be very clear about it. That day, if it wasn't for Xian, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to stand here with my life. The man's throat tightened as if something was choking him. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and stopped the man from making a sound. She waved her hand and said calmly, I'm not blaming you. To me, you are just a stranger. No, to be more precise, an enemy. So there's no need to show such a guilty expression. She paused for a moment. The expression on the man's face became more and more complicated, as if he had a lot to say. She chuckled softly. I just want to tell you, don't easily say things like you like me and won't hurt me. These kinds of words can only deceive yourself. There's no need to use them in front of me to gain my trust. I don't have the time to play the game of true love with you. So, if you don't intend to show your real face, there's no need to lure me here. Yiqing Luo's vision swept across the surroundings. Chapter 4077. As the man listened to Yiqing Luo's words, the expression on his face was extremely painful. As though he was hurt, his eyes were filled with endless pain. Wearing D.M. Xian's face, showing such an expression, it indeed made Yiqing Luo feel like she was out of a play. West Cliff Mountain. It's my fault. The man's deep voice was filled with pain as he spat out every single word from his thin lips. The 2 books by his side were clenched into fists, as though he was trying his best to restrain something. His voice turned hoarse and deep. But this time, I really don't have any intention to hurt you. I just want to see you. To tell you that I'm not trying to impersonate him. I just want you to look at me a little more. If other ladies heard these affectionate words, they would definitely be touched by these words. But Yiqing Luo expressed that her heart wasn't moved at all. She didn't accept this kind of explanation. Using the guise of true love to impersonate someone else? Furthermore, using someone else's identity to deceive another lady? Thinking of Mu Qiulan, Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with ridicule. She tilted her head as she looked at him with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Her eyes were filled with ridicule and ridicule. The man's eyes were filled with raging waves, as though huge waves were surging in his eyes. Under the darkness, it was dyed with a patch of black fog. It was so thick that there was only a patch of extreme black. In a split second, an endless amount of thick black evil qi gathered around him. It kept on surging and wrapping around him. When she saw that patch of thick evil qi, Yiqing Luo revealed a vigilant expression as she retreated a few steps and stared at him alertly. Had the true love card been played badly, and he flew into a rage out of humiliation? But her alertness had just been raised. The next moment, the man in front of her seemed to have extinguished, and in a blink of an eye, he regained his previous warmth. He looked at Yiqing Luo's vigilant expression as a glint of pain and hurt flashed past his eyes. Sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. The man said hoarsely. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as she looked at him indifferently. Don't go so far as to scare me. But from the evil qi that was overflowing from his body, and the action of quickly retracting the evil qi. In Yiqing Luo's heart, a vague guess surfaced. He was still pondering over this conjecture. In her ear, the man's hoarse voice, with a slight urgency sounded, also interrupted her thoughts. I know that no matter what I say, you won't believe me with the identity of the gloomy palace. The man lowered his head, the shadows blocking his expression. While saying that I'm in love with you, I also know that you must be laughing at me in your heart, thinking that I'm dirty. In the end, there was a hint of self-mockery in his tone. Yi Qingluo's slender brows creased even tighter. He had almost confirmed a certain thought in his heart. She pursed her lips and deliberated for a moment before saying, "To be honest, what you and the mysterious maiden of Shadowless City want to do has nothing to do with me. But, using Xian's face and identity to tangle with the mysterious maiden of Shadowless City, I can't just sit back and watch." At the end of the day, it was because the person he was impersonating was DMO Xian. His actions had affected DMO Xian. Therefore, that was why she cared so much. The man's gaze dimmed a little. The next moment, the young lady's indifferent words shattered all the hope in his heart. Chapter 4078. Didn't care. Because she didn't care about him. So she didn't care if he was dirty. The man chuckled softly. His laughter was full of bitterness. Especially looking for Yi Qingluo. He was really asking for trouble. He knew Yi Qingluo's character. But he still wanted to meet her alone, to tell her what was on his mind. "Madam." "Student Yi Qingluo." "Little Qingluo." Suddenly, Gui Wu and the others called out from not far away. Those people's voices were obviously getting closer. The man's expression congealed as he raised his head and looked towards the direction of the voice. This was a corner not far from the treasure gathering. At the corner, they might bump into the passers-by. It should be. The man's evil chi had attracted Gui Wu's perception. Plus, there was no sign of her in the warehouse. Therefore, following this evil in chi, the few of them found their way here. As the footsteps got closer, the man's expression became more and more solemn. He took a look at Yi Qingluo. His thin lips pursed into a line. His hands, which were hanging by his side, slowly rose and curled up, making a defensive posture. Those three people came over. Plus Yi Qingluo. Today he would not be able to escape even if he had wings. But just as the footsteps were nearing the corner, the young lady's clear voice suddenly rang. "You guys go back to the treasure gathering first, I'm fine." The approaching footsteps stopped. After a few breaths of silence, Gui Wu's deep voice was heard. "Are you sure?" "Yes, I'll go back immediately," Yi Qingluo replied. At the corner, they could vaguely hear Old Lai and Gui Wu arguing, about to rush over. But they were forcibly dragged away by Gui Wu. The approaching footsteps and breathtaking aura gradually faded away. The man who was in an offensive and defensive posture stiffened slightly, until that aura completely disappeared. This time he moved his body, his eyes overflowed with joy. "You don't want to kill me?" Earlier, he only needed Yi Qingluo's call. There was no way he could escape today. But Yi Qingluo let those people leave. Did this mean that in Yi Qingluo's heart he still had a place for him? "Go." Yi Qingluo's eyes were calm, as if she didn't notice the man's eyes burning. The man's thin lips raised into a smile. With DMO Xian's face, that smile was enough to topple cities. But Yi Qingluo's heart was still unperturbed. "This time, take it as me returning your favor. If there's a next time, I won't be merciful." Yi Qingluo threw this sentence and turned around to leave. Behind her, the man's voice tightened as he murmured the word favor. "You know who I am. To be able to control the evil chi in the Palace of Gloomy Shadows. Other than you, I can't find a second person." Yi Qingluo didn't turn back as she walked past the corner and disappeared from the man's sight. At this moment, the man seemed to have lost all his support and fell to the ground. He stared blankly at Yi Qingluo's departing figure. Suddenly he chuckled. His wide palms covered his face, covering his reddened eyes, as well as the sparkles that were seeping out of his eyes. Ha! Ha ha ha! She finally recognized him. In the end, it had pushed the distance between the two of them even further. Yi Qingluo had only walked for tens of meters when she saw the three people standing in front waiting for her. Yi Qingluo went forward to welcome them. Chapter 4079. Yi Qingluo knew that these few people were concerned about her, so she didn't hide it. Impersonating Xian's men. Zhou Mo exploded at once. He pretended to be a venerable sovereign and caused so much trouble. Why didn't you seize the opportunity to catch him? Why did you let him go? He had long known that the person who met Yiqing Luo was an impostor. He should have rushed over. Of course, he didn't rush over to catch the impostor to avenge the venerable sovereign. She simply wanted to know who that person was, to satisfy his interest in gossiping. Yiqing Luo indifferently glanced at him, and from his expression, she knew what he was thinking in his heart. Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes as she ignored him. Madam, you won't let us go over. Does it mean that you already know who the impostor is? Lao Lai also came over and asked nosily. Zhou Mo immediately pricked up his ears. But Yiqing Luo didn't give an answer to this question. He just walked straight towards the treasure trove. She lowered her eyes and in her mind, she recalled that face which was exactly the same as Dmo Xian's, but the expression was entirely different. He sighed inwardly. Yes, she already knew the identity of the impostor. She had seen how smoothly he controlled the evil energy of the Palace of Darkness. Yiqing Luo already had an answer in her heart. That person was indeed someone she had met before. It could be considered as a form of friendship. On the surface, the Palace Master of Netherworld Palace. On the surface, the Palace Master of Darkness Palace was in charge of everything. She had once been imprisoned in a secret base of the Dark Nether Palace in the Nirvana realm by the true mastermind behind the scenes. It was him who had told Dmo Xian about her whereabouts. Only then did Dmo Xian arrive in time. Therefore, just now, I'll take it as returning him a favor. She had never thought that the person who impersonated Dmo Xian was the palace lord of the secluded palace on the surface. Why Dmo Xian didn't want her to know the other party's true identity? It was because Dmo Xian also knew of his feelings for her? Was that why he didn't want to have too much contact with them? This shouldn't be the case. Dmo Xian should be very clear on how much she hated the Palace of Darkness. He definitely wouldn't be interested in, or have a good impression of anyone from the Dark Nether Palace. She didn't even care about Zhu Wuxin. Not to mention the Palace Master of Twilight Palace on the surface. To be able to become the Palace Master of Gloomy Palace on the surface was enough to show that he had a close relationship with Gloomy Palace. The last time, she had revealed her whereabouts to Dmo Xian. Can live until now. It also showed his position in the Palace of Gloomy Shadows. What exactly was Dmo Xian guarding against? He was puzzled. They had already returned to treasure gathering. Before he reached the entrance, he saw a large group of citizens gathered outside the treasure gathering hall. He could vaguely hear crackling sounds coming from the treasure trove. Yiqing Luo's brows creased slightly as she exchanged glances with the few people beside her. A few of them quickly stepped forward. On seeing Yiqing Luo and the others, the surrounding citizens immediately opened their mouths. Madam D, everyone. Where are you going? Not good. People from Linglong Palace Hall are coming. Linglong Palace? Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she placed her vision onto the main entrance of the Gathering Treasures Exchange. A few girls dressed in lotus green robes were walking around the treasure gathering hall. There were also 2 or 3 women dressed even more luxuriously, and they were constantly rummaging through the items in the treasure trove. It was obvious that they did not come with good intentions. Chapter 4080. Listening to the citizens' words. Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly contracted. Muqiulan was dead. Muqiulan was dead, so why did Linglong Palace's people come to the treasure gathering for? Could it be? And even blamed Muqiulan's death on her? As expected, the citizen's next sentence was, Madam Emperor, I don't know where the news came from, but without embroiling City's mysterious maiden and Shadowless City's mysterious maiden were both killed by you. So this Linglong Palace is here to clarify with you if there's any misunderstanding. The citizen's words were very beautiful, but from the sound of things being flipped over in the treasure gathering hall, it totally didn't seem like they were here to clarify, to avoid any misunderstanding. This Linglong Palace is really arrogant now, even daring to behave atrociously in my territory. Old Lai saw the treasure gathering being trampled, so how could he possibly keep his composure and listen to the citizen's explanation? He flicked his sleeves and rushed into the treasure gathering hall. Old Lai didn't hesitate as he rushed up with a punch, hammering down on that lady who was still pushing the table. That lady's reaction was extremely fast as she speedily took a step back. But she still staggered a few steps back from Old Lai's aftershock. That lady's face was instantly filled with anger as she raised her hand to strike back. This palm had yet to land on her. But she was stopped by a dignified voice. "Stop it." When the lady heard this voice, it was like a mouse seeing a cat as she was so frightened that she shrunk back. This angry shout made Yiqing Luo look towards the direction of the voice. She saw a lady around 30 years old sitting in the corner of the treasure-gathering hall at the guest area. The lady's expression was grave and stern, not angry but imposing. Just by sitting there, she gave off an extremely strong pressure. She stood up as she looked calmly at Old Lai. Her imposing aura might be useful against those two ladies from Linglong Palace, but, to Old Lai, it was totally useless. Old Lai turned his head and met the lady's gaze as he raised his head and sneered. "Yo, isn't this Linglong Palace's Grand Judicial Elder? Why, you heard that I'm here at the treasure-gathering hall, so you brought your men to wreck my place?" The lady frowned as she replied impatiently. "This elder's motive for coming here has nothing to do with Hell Palace." "Unrelated? King destroyed my shop that I just got, and now you're telling me that it has nothing to do with me?" Old Lai spat on the ground, pointed at the woman and cursed. "Great judge, who was the one who smashed these things in the treasure-gathering exchange house? Which hand and which leg did it? Either you chop off their arms and legs, or I won't let you off." He was so domineering that he didn't even care that the person in front of him was a woman. Well, for Old Lai, gender was not important at all. More importantly, he was extremely displeased. The few people from Linglong Palace probably didn't expect that they would run over to question Yiqing Luo and capture her. However, it had been messed up by Old Lai from the Underworld Palace. If they took action against Old Lai, that was the entire Underworld Palace. It wasn't that the Linglong Palace was afraid of the Hell Palace. However, the Underworld Palace was simply too difficult to deal with. If it was possible, they wouldn't even want to look at the people from the Underworld Palace. The first judicial elder tried to suppress the anger in his heart and coldly said, "Old Lai, I advise you not to push your luck. I don't want to cause unnecessary trouble." Chapter 4081. Grand Judicial Elder took a deep breath. Linglong Palace will bear all the losses of the treasure exchange. So now, can you please invite Miss Yiqing Luo out? Just bear all the losses? Is this matter that simple? Old Lai was unforgiving. Then I'll bring my brothers from Hell Palace to your Linglong Palace for a while, and then bear all the losses. Are you willing to do so? Grand Judicial Elder was apparently suppressing his anger, almost causing an internal injury as his features contorted. Old Lai snorted. "I've already made it clear, whoever smashed it, which hand, which leg touched the things in my shop. Punish yourself obediently, otherwise." Humph humph humph. The three ladies from Linglong Palace were so frightened that their faces turned pale. As they looked at Grand Judicial Elder pleadingly, Grand Judicial Elder naturally couldn't do anything to the people he brought along. If he really did something, if today's news were to spread, that Linglong Palace was afraid of Hell Palace, so they didn't hesitate to cripple their own disciple in order to protect Linglong Palace. If this kind of gossip were to spread, if Linglong Palace came to question Yiqing Luo, they would lose half of their imposing manner. Immediately, Grand Judicial Elder pounded the table. "In that case, Hell Palace is determined to go against Linglong Palace. Don't King flatter me." Old Lai spat again. "Do you still want to escalate the matter to two forces? Do you think I'm afraid? But you have to be clear, it's your Grand Judicial Elder who used Linglong Palace's name to declare war on Hell Palace, and not me representing Hell Palace to go against Linglong Palace." Old Lai's logical rebuttal made Grand Judicial Elder tremble nonstop. Old Lai gleefully winked at the crowd. Trying to go against Yiqing Luo in front of him? He, Old Lai, could make Linglong Palace doubt their lives. Good. What a Hell Palace. Old Lai, I'll remember you. Grand Judicial Elder's hand trembled as he pointed at Old Lai, sneering. She flicked her sleeves in anger. and led the few of them towards the entrance of the treasure exchange. Old Lai was still clamoring behind him. Don't forget about the loss of the treasure gathering. You're a dignified great judicial elder. Once you say something, you can't go back on your word. The first judicial elder stopped and clenched his fists. Then, he stepped out of the door. The onlookers made way for them in unison. The great judicial elder gritted his teeth and strode forward. He had only taken a few steps. He then heard a clear and sweet voice. Linglong Palace's great judicial elder is looking for me. May I know what's the matter? There was a hint of laughter in that voice. Like pearls falling onto a plate, it was very pleasant to hear. The great judicial elder immediately looked towards the source of the sound. The two pale-faced ladies from Linglong Palace stared at that direction as their voices quivered. It's Yiqing Luo. The great judicial elder narrowed his eyes and looked at the girl in front of him. The young girl was dressed in red, and she was overflowing with youth. Her smile and frown flowed with a bewitching charm. She was smiling, and her eyes were filled with smiles. However, under that sweet smile, the great judge felt an inexplicable sense of mockery. This thought made the great judicial elder's face sunk. Imperial Madam, why are you? Old Lai pounded his own head when he saw Yiqing Luo walking out. He had finally managed to anger the people from Linglong Palace to leave. Why did Imperial Madam take the initiative to stand out? Chapter 4082. Old Lai's kindness. Yiqing Luo naturally knew about it. But even if Old Lai angered her away this time, there would be a next time. What's more, Linglong Palace's motive wasn't very clear. If they were really here for Mu Qiulan's death. If she didn't step forward to find out the exact situation, this scapegoat would always be on her. The great judicial elder looked at the figure who slowly walked out from the crowd. Her face was cold and gloomy. It turned out that this little girl had been outside the door from the very beginning, but she intentionally waited for Old Lai to make them unable to refute, and left in anger before calling out to her. She had already stepped out of the door of the treasure gathering. The moment it started, Linglong Palace's imposing manner had been deprived by half. But even if she felt aggrieved, the great judicial elder still had to lead the few ladies back to the treasure gathering. Her gaze was like poison as she stared at Yiqing Luo. Her sharp gaze didn't make Yiqing Luo feel any discomfort. Yiqing Luo's thin lips curled up as she looked at her with a smile. That smile made the great judicial elder have a kind of chilling feeling. The great judicial elder pursed her lips as she stabilized her state of mind. She who had already lost most of her imposing manner, could only choose the most direct. To ask, does Miss Yi know about Shadowless City's mysterious maiden's death? Yes. Yiqing Luo nodded. She had just answered when the great judicial elder's eyes flashed. Yiqing Luo continued. Outside the treasure gathering, I roughly heard about what happened. The great judicial elder squinted her eyes. Then what do you want to say? Nothing. Yiqing Luo replied indifferently. The great judicial elder's expression suddenly stiffened. In that case, you admit that you killed Shadowless City's mysterious maiden? Admit? Yiqing Luo tilted her head as she chuckled. When did I admit it? Regarding the news of Shadowless City's mysterious maiden's death, you have nothing to say. Isn't that a tacit admission? The lady standing behind the great judicial elder frowned as her cold expression was filled with hostility. Immediately, she turned her head and whispered into the great judicial elder's ear. Great judicial elder, this lady is extremely cunning. She's obviously playing dumb. His voice was not soft at all. Yiqing Luo raised her eyes with a smile which didn't look like a smile as she squinted at the young lady who interrupted them and sneered. Hall Master Ji, it's been a long time since we last met. Aren't you going to greet me when you see your savior? The woman's body immediately stiffened. Yiqing Luo raised her eyebrows and looked at the grand judge. Are the people from Linglong Palace so ungrateful? You. That lady's face turned pale as she pointed at Yiqing Luo and stared at her furiously. His mouth moved, but he didn't know how to refute. Being criticized by a junior in such a haughty manner, the grand judge's face darkened. What do you mean? Yiqing Luo slowly picked up the chairs which had been kicked over from the ground as she spoke out slowly. Don't tell me. The great judicial magistrate doesn't know that I had once saved the two of you, Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu? Weren't the ones who pushed the tables and smashed the items in the treasure-gathering hall the escorts invited by the auction previously? Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu? Back then, as soon as the crisis of the auction was resolved, Xiao Yilu also died inside. Yiqing Luo didn't pay attention to these unimportant people, and what happened next? These two hall masters also took advantage of the chaos to escape back to Linglong Palace. She had not expected. They actually followed the great judicial magistrate and ran over to Without Embroiling City. Chapter 4083. When the Grand Judge heard this, his sharp gaze immediately shot towards the two hall masters. From her attitude, Yiqing Luo knew that after these two hall masters returned to the Linglong Palace, they probably hadn't told the Linglong Palace about what happened in Without Embroiling City. Looking at how aggressive the Linglong Palace was when they came to gather treasures today, could it be that even Xiao Yilu's death was blamed on her? Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as the smile on her lips deepened. Great justice. It's best to first understand the situation clearly before coming over to denounce. Otherwise, if you become someone else's chess piece, wouldn't that be an insult to Linglong Palace? The Grand Judge's expression gradually darkened. The gaze he shot towards Yiqing Luo was filled with a sliver of murderous intent. The aura that Xiao Chen emitted startled the two hall masters beside him. When they looked at each other, horror flashed in their eyes. Hall Master Ji raised her delicate eyebrows and pretended to be angry. She said sternly, "Stop trying to sow discord here." The great judicial elder naturally investigated this matter thoroughly. Do you dare to say that you didn't kill the mysterious fairy of Shadowless City? Hall Master Lu immediately echoed. The grand judicial elder has always been fair and impartial. He will never listen to your side of the story. Since we've come to treasure gathering grounds, then we have absolute proof. You're still trying to quibble. The two of them were afraid that the judiciary would investigate the matter of the auction, so they immediately shifted their focus to the Empyrean Fairy of Shadowless City. The Grand Judge's cold gaze swept over the two of them. In his eyes, there was a deep and dense cold light. However, in the end, she did not criticize the two hall masters in front of others. But his vision fell onto Yiqing Luo. His expression was as cold as ice, and his eyes were sinister, as if he wanted to skin her alive. The Empyrean maiden of Shadowless City died in the Qiao family. According to the bystanders, the Qiao family head was ordered by you to lock her up in the room. Yiqing Luo crossed her arms in front of her chest. You still left out one person. Her voice paused for a moment, and her smile deepened. She spat out 4 words one by one. Di Zun Di Ren. Locking Mu Qiulan in the Qiao family wasn't just Yiqing Luo's idea. This was also Di Emotian's intention. He even ordered 2 hall masters of the Emperor Palace to stand guard there. The Grand Magistrate deliberately did not mention Di Emotian. They didn't want to provoke the Emperor Palace. But would Yiqing Luo let her wish come true? You don't want to talk about it? I insist on bringing it up. When the words Overlord came out from Yiqing Luo's mouth, the Grand Judge's face alternated between blue and white. He had not expected that Yiqing Luo would not play her cards according to common sense. Generally speaking, which woman would be so bold as to bring out her man's name? Even if they wanted to bully others, they should have done it tactfully. Yiqing Luo was laughing. She could hug her man's thigh anytime, anywhere. Not satisfied? Hold it in. She was just that cool and arrogant. Miss Yi, I only want to clarify the truth of the matter with you. If you continue to be so overbearing, I can't help but suspect that Miss Yi is feeling guilty. The Grand Judge could no longer hold back the anger that was surging in his heart. Yiqing Luo totally disregarded the berserk imposing manner released by the Grand Judge. The ridiculing smile on her face grew even more. Heh. Does the Grand Judge treat me as a fool? Kicking chairs, flipping tables and flipping things the moment I come in. Is this called as trying to clarify the truth of the matter with me? Chapter 4084. The hostility in the eyes of the Grand Justice was so violent that it seemed like it was about to set off a storm. The ones who were even more furious were the few good-for-nothings behind her, unable to accomplish anything, but only capable of ruining things. If it wasn't for the fact that they had pretended to overturn the entire store the minute they entered, they wouldn't have allowed Yi Qingluo to use them as a talking point. It was also because of the actions of these pieces of trash. Their originally surging momentum was being suppressed to the point of being pushed back. From the very beginning, his attitude was like a punitive expedition. But now they were talking to each other in a friendly manner. For the sake of the Linglong Palace's reputation, the Great Justice had to swallow his anger. She clenched her fists tightly and suppressed the raging anger in her chest. She said word by word, "This is indeed inappropriate and the Linglong Palace will take responsibility for it. But before that, please answer my questions, Miss Yi." Yi Qingluo curved her lips. "Great Judge, please ask." The Grand Judge asked, "Have you seen the mysterious fairy of Shadowless City today?" Yi Qingluo replied, "Yes." The Great Judge, "How many times have you seen him?" Yi Qingluo, "Once." "You're lying." Hall Master Lu's big round eyes stared angrily at Yi Qingluo. "How could it be possible that we've only met once?" "Oh." Then Hall Master Lu said, "How many times have I seen her?" Yi Qingluo's brows rose as she teased. Hall Master Lu sneered coldly. "Previously, under the watchful eyes of everyone, you saw the mysterious maiden of Shadowless City once. Then, you quietly entered the room where the mysterious maiden of Shadowless City was imprisoned and killed her." When Yi Qingluo heard that, her curved lips started to smile bit by bit. Because of this smile, her beautiful face became even more charming. Almost all the onlookers were dazzled for an instant. "Hall Master Lu, for you to be so detailed, could it be that you saw it with your own eyes?" Hall Chief Lu's expression froze and he stammered, Although I didn't see it with my own eyes, but according to the evidence at the scene, it's you." "Evidence?" Yi Qingluo raised her brows. "What evidence?" Hall Master Lu seemed to have finally found his confidence. He quickly took out a scroll from his pocket. The scroll was unfurled. There was a jade pendant drawn on it. A red line. Below it was a jade bead that looked like an emerald. When he saw the jade pearl, his eyes widened. Yi Qingluo's pupils unconsciously contracted. The few people from Linglong Palace stared at Yi Qingluo's expression without blinking. He noticed the change in her gaze. Hall Master Lu immediately asked, "Is the thing on the painting yours?" Yi Qingluo raised her hand and touched her neck. Apart from the azure dew silk chain, the jade pendant that he had always worn around his neck was indeed no longer on his neck. Her actions had already verified that the item on the scroll was indeed Yi Qingluo's. A proud smile appeared on Hall Master Lu's face. This jade pendant was found in the hands of the mysterious fairy of Shadowless City. It should be something that the Empyrean fairy of Shadowless City accidentally tore off from the murderer when she was struggling before her death. When he noticed that the jade pendant on his neck had disappeared, he immediately felt a chill run down his spine. Yi Qingluo roughly understood. It seemed like someone was trying to frame her from behind. That jade pendant was from when she could not control the restlessness of the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade, and did not obtain the heart-calming bead. The jade pendant that Dmo Xian had given her. It could temporarily suppress the restlessness of the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. Later on, Dmo Xian specially left a strand of consciousness in the jade pendant and saved her life at the critical moment. After that, she had been hanging this jade pendant around her neck and had never taken it off. This jade pendant. When did it disappear? And it even appeared in Mu Qiulan's hands. Chapter 4085. Since Miss Yi has admitted that this jade pendant is indeed yours, then please cooperate with the Linglong Palace's investigation. The Grand Judge glanced at the two hall masters. The two hall masters immediately went forward, one on the left and one on the right, as they approached Yi Qingluo, wanting to grab her. Yi Qingluo's eyes narrowed slightly but had yet to move. Old Lai had already rushed forward and slapped one of them away. He stood in front of Yi Qing Luo as he rolled up his sleeves and sneered. I want to see who dares to touch her. Old Lai, are you trying to interfere with the affairs of the Linglong Palace? The Grand Judge's face darkened. He was slapped in the face by Old Lai again and again. No matter how magnanimous she was, she couldn't bear it any longer. Old Lai's attack sent the two hall masters flying to the side. This was a slap to the face of the palace of Linglong. Don't use the Linglong Palace Hall to suppress me. Do you think I'm afraid? Old Lai sneered. The Grand Judge's eyes were filled with malice. His face was gloomy and frighteningly gloomy. The two of them looked like they were about to fight. Yi Qing Luo patted Old Lai's shoulder as she pulled him to her side and shook her head at him. Then he looked up at the Grand Judge and said, This jade pendant is indeed mine, but I don't know how it ended up in the hands of the mysterious fairy's corpse. You still want to play dumb? It was clearly you who killed the Empyrean maiden of Shadowless City. You just want to provoke our Linglong Hall. Hall Master Lu's seemingly adorable big eyes were filled with hatred. She was half lying on the ground, one hand pressed against her chest. Blood flowed from the corner of his lips. He was slapped by Old Lai. She couldn't be angry and had to endure it. Immediately, the anger in his heart was vented towards Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she looked at her with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Hall Master Lu's words sounded so certain. May I ask if you had personally witnessed me killing Shadowless City's mysterious young maiden? She paused slightly, and the smile on her face deepened. A cold arc of ridicule appeared in her long and narrow eyes. Furthermore, the mysterious lady of Shadowless City is just a stray dog in my eyes. If I want to kill her, it'll be a piece of cake. Why would I need to be so secretive? Furthermore, your Linglong Palace has nothing to do with me. I am someone who is afraid of trouble, so I can't be bothered to provoke your Linglong Palace. Saying that, Yi Qing Luo laughed lowly as her eyes were filled with ridicule. If Hall Master Lu has persecutory delusion, you'd better go and get it treated otherwise. It will drag down Linglong Palace's standard as a whole, making others feel that your Linglong Palace's quality, and the people, are all extremely incompetent. You. Hall Master Lu was so infuriated by Yi Qing Luo's words that his face flushed red. Yi Qing Luo's words were impolite. He did not give any face to the Linglong Palace. How could the great judge not hear the sarcasm in Yi Qing Luo's words? As his face darkened and his tone became heavier. Miss Yi, no matter if you killed Shadowless City's mysterious maiden or not, your jade pendant is at the crime scene, so you are the suspect. The mysterious lady of Shadowless City was nurtured by my Linglong Palace Hall. I will take full responsibility for her death. What the great judge said makes a lot of sense. Yi Qing Luo nodded in agreement. My jade pendant is at the crime scene, so I indeed have to take responsibility. This rare cooperation made the great judge frown vigilantly. What are you trying to do? Nothing much, just to cooperate with the great judge to find the real murderer behind this. Yi Qing Luo replied with a smile. Chapter 4086. Yi Qing Luo's smile deepened when she saw that the great judicial judge had yet to make a move. Her long and narrow eyes were curved, adding a touch of flirtatiousness to her beautiful face. Great judicial judge elder doesn't seem to want me to cooperate? The young lady raised her eyebrows meaningfully. She looked at the great judicial judge with some probing and ridicule. The great judicial judge elder's pupils shrank, his dark and gloomy eyes curled up his lips. It's good that Miss Yi can cooperate. Yi Qing Luo suddenly cooperated. She deliberately wanted to disturb her thoughts. Since Yi Qing Luo had sent herself to the door, then she wouldn't stand on ceremony. The great judicial judge elder's gaze moved. Hurry and invite Miss Yi to the Linglong Hall. The two hall masters climbed up from the ground and carefully looked at Old Lai's direction, then tensed up their emotions and approached Yi Qing Luo bit by bit. Just as the two of them were about to catch Yi Qing Luo, a clear and melodious laugh rang out. Wait! The two hall masters quivered and instantly froze on the spot. The great judicial judge elder's gaze sunk. What does Miss Yi mean? The young girl was still smiling at them. Her expression was calm, and there was even a meaningful smile at the corner of her mouth. because my pendant was found at the scene of the crime, so there is no problem with you being certain that I was the one who killed the mysterious fairy of Shadowless City. But you don't have the most direct evidence to prove that I killed her. There's no witness, no physical evidence, no wound, and the way of her death is related to me. So, what are you trying to say? The great judicial judge frowned even tighter, his heart inexplicably raised. Yi Qingluo smiled. So I should personally prove that I'm not the murderer. How do you want to prove it? The great judicial judge asked. Yi Qingluo replied, the crime scene. Her words just ended. Hall Master Ji's face darkened and quickly retorted. Impossible. You're such a sinister and cunning villain. If I let you go to the crime scene, wouldn't it give you a chance to erase all traces related to you? Yi Qingluo gave her a sarcastic glance. Long before you came to gather treasures to denounce me, you should have checked the entire house. Everyone's expression changed. It also verified that what Yi Qingluo said was indeed not wrong. Yi Qingluo laughed. I think in the entire room, other than the jade pendant in Shadowless City's mysterious maiden's hands, there shouldn't be any other clues, so why can't I go? Hall Master Ji was rendered speechless by Zhang Xian. The Grand Judge glanced at the citizens who kept poking their heads into the treasure-gathering hall, as well as the hall masters he had brought with him. She frowned and finally said, I promise you, I'll let you go to the scene to find evidence. Grand Judicial Elder. Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu looked at the Grand Judge anxiously, their faces filled with reluctance. The Grand Judge's eyes, which seemed to be soaked in ice, swept over the two of them. The two of them were so frightened that their faces turned pale. The Great Judge cast his icy cold gaze onto Yi Qingluo. But, if Miss Yi is unable to find any evidence at the scene that can prove your innocence, then you must obediently follow me to the Linglong Palace Hall and accept their investigation. As the Great Judge spoke, the expressions of the few people beside Yi Qingluo sunk. Chapter 4087. If Yi Qingluo went to Linglong Hall, who knew what methods Linglong Palace would use to deal with Yi Qingluo, no matter how strong Yi Qingluo's ability was. However, the Linglong Palace was their territory after all. What if he was injured? What should he do then? The few of them had yet to speak. Yi Qingluo had already opened her mouth as she smiled and nodded in response. No problem. Xiao Qingluo. Zhou Mo tugged Yi Qingluo's arm. Are you silly? Lao Lai's eyes widened. Even I can see that she said that on purpose. Why did you agree? Yi Qingluo's brows were filled with a faint smile. She looked at the concerned and worried gazes directed at her. Her half-narrowed eyes curved as a trace of craftiness flashed through them. I didn't say that I would go to Linglong Palace alone. By then, wouldn't it be better to drag Dmo Xian along? With Dmo Xian holding the fort, why would he be afraid that Linglong Palace Hall would have any ill intentions? Furthermore, after the matter of Qiao Yulu and Mu Qiulan, the two Empyrean fairies, Yi Qingluo felt that she had to make a trip to the Linglong Hall. She wanted to see what kind of existence the Linglong Palace was. And what sort of criteria did they use to select those Empyrean fairies? Zhou Mo and the others exchanged glances with one another, and did not say anything else. Alright, they were overthinking things. How could Yi Qingluo be bullied by others for no reason? It was already a blessing that she didn't bully others. The Grand Judge and the others didn't pay attention to their whispers. Seeing Yi Qingluo agreeing to this request, a cold smile appeared on their faces. Vaguely, there was a hint of viciousness. The group arrived at the Qiao Mansion, where Mu Qiulan was imprisoned. The entire courtyard was completely surrounded by the female disciples of the Linglong Palace. Even Patriarch Qiao was stopped at the entrance of the courtyard. There were also many people from the forces that were staying in the Qiao Mansion, as well as people from the major forces that had heard the news and rushed over to watch the show. Patriarch Qiao's face was extremely unsightly. This was probably the first time Patriarch Qiao had encountered such a situation. In his own mansion, he was intercepted by an outsider. He felt very aggrieved. But this matter implicated Yi Qingluo. In order to prevent complications, he had no choice but to endure. When Yi Qingluo, The great judicial judge and the others came over. What they saw was such a lively scene. As soon as they saw the great judge and the others, an uproar broke out. The onlookers moved away one after another. Patriarch Qiao saw Yi Qingluo, who was walking right in front. Behind her, the two hall masters of the Linglong Palace were following her from both sides. Patriarch Qiao's expression immediately changed. He quickly walked forward and said, "Imperial Madam." Yi Qingluo gave him a comforting smile as she shook her head. "Patriarch Qiao, I'm so sorry. Because of me, I've implicated you." Luo's Qiaolong Palace. Moreover, the person who died was the Empyrean fairy trained by the Linglong Palace. Qing Luo and Qiao Qing Luo was Qing. Moreover, it would not only be the Linglong Palace, but the Muqiulong clan would also be dissatisfied with Patriarch Qiao. "I Chen Qing Luo." Patriarch Qiao waved his hand. "Guiyu, that old man's eyesight is not wrong. My son's eyesight is not wrong either. Moreover, that mysterious maiden from Shadowless City deserves to die." Saying this, his eyes were filled with sarcasm as he shot a glance at the direction of the Grand Judge. Chapter 4088. Qiao family's patriarch was already full of complaints about the Linglong Palace. Actually, his daughter had never been as competitive as she was now. Although the sibling's mother had passed away early, and he was busy with the family's affairs, he did not discipline Xiao Yulu much. But children born in big families would have etiquette instructors since they were young. In addition, he was influenced by what he saw and heard. His personality wouldn't collapse no matter what. Take Xiao Yinyan for example. Although he was a little apathetic, his character was excellent. He never cared too much about his status or had any other ambitions. But Xiao Yulu, ever since she was chosen by the people of the Linglong Palace as a candidate for the Empyrean fairy, from the little sweetheart who knew nothing about the world, she became a competitive and vicious little devil. After that, his temper was out of control. By the time he realized it, his relationship with Xiao Yulu had become estranged, and he couldn't say anything intimate to her. In particular, he couldn't stand Xiao Yulu's actions. Every time he said a few words, Xiao Yulu would look impatient, or she would turn around and accuse him of not having the right to control her. In the end, he went straight to the Linglong Palace. Once he left, he didn't return for several years. They would occasionally meet, but they would always part on bad terms. The last time they met was when Xiao Yulu became the Empyrean fairy and returned to the clan. In family head Xiao's heart, he blamed himself for not teaching Xiao Yulu well in the past. He also hated the Linglong Palace for grooming his daughter into such a character. If not for the Linglong Palace, Xiao Yulu wouldn't have come to this. On top of that, Muqiulong, the mysterious lady of Shadowless City, also had such a strange personality. Patriarch Qiao could not help but suspect the Palace of Linglong's method of nurturing the Empyrean fairy. Especially now, the Linglong Palace Hall acted as if it was a matter of course. They wantonly arranged for the Linglong Palace Hall's people to enter the Qiao residence. Even the head of the Qiao residence was blocked from entering. Patriarch Qiao's words were obviously pointing at the Linglong Palace. The Grand Inquisitor's face sunk as he squinted at Patriarch Qiao, but didn't say anything. Instead he looked towards Yi Qingluo and said calmly, "Miss Yi, go in." Yi Qingluo's brows rose as she patted family head Qiao's arm lightly, indicating for him to keep calm. Then, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he slowly walked towards the courtyard. Zhou Mo and the others followed behind him. Before he could get close, he was stopped by the disciples of the Linglong Palace who were guarding the entrance. The death of the Empyrean fairy of Shadowless City still needs to be investigated. It is not advisable for too many people to enter the scene. Bah! Who knows if you will take the opportunity to lay your hands on my sister? You are a group of bad people. None of you have any good intentions. Kitty Lee glared fiercely at the Grand Judge and reached out to push away the Linglong Palace disciple in front of her. Kitty! Yi Qingluo took a look at Kitty Lee and swept a glance at her outstretched paw. No matter, wait for me outside. Seeing that Yi Qingluo had opened her mouth, Kitty Lee could only retract her hand angrily. Yi Qingluo stepped into the courtyard. The Grand Inquisitor followed closely behind. Kitty Lee's eyes widened as she pointed at the Grand Inquisitor and said angrily, "Kitty knew you were up to no good. What do you want to do?" "Miss Yi is a suspect. If she enters the crime scene alone and destroys the evidence, then it's hard to explain," Hall Master Ji said with a cold smile. Kitty Lee was so angry that her cheeks puffed up. Yiqing Luo's eyes were calm as she shot a glance at Hall Master Ji. Hall Master Ji was so shocked that his face turned pale as he pursed his lips tightly. She then retracted her gaze and walked towards the direction where Mu Qiulan stayed. Chapter 4089. She pushed the door open. A wave of deathly stillness hit her in the face. Mu Qiulan had just died not more than 2 hours ago. But there wasn't much stench in the room. But the moment Yiqing Luo opened the door, she sensed an inexplicable chill. That kind of chill was a little like Eveline Qi. But in the blink of an eye, it disappeared. It was as if what he had just felt was nothing more than an illusion. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as she glanced sideways at the judicial officer standing behind her. The judicial officer's expression didn't change at all, as though he hadn't sensed anything amiss. Seeing Yiqing Luo's gaze, the judicial officer asked coldly, "Miss Yi, have you discovered something?" Yiqing Luo carefully sized up the judicial officer again. The judicial officer indeed didn't seem to have sensed the gust of Qi earlier. Yiqing Luo retracted her gaze and shook her head as she turned her attention back to the room. It was afternoon and there was plenty of light. But there was a white candle lit in the room, and the flame was flickering. The faintly swaying shadows made the entire room look a little more gloomy. Yiqing Luo walked slowly. Her gaze wandered around. She walked all the way to the inner hall, which was the sleeping room. Mu Qiulan was lying on the bed, but her legs were slightly bent and stretched out by the side of the bed. She was lying on her back, and the posture of her arms was twisted. Yiqing Luo saw the piece of jade pendant in Mu Qiulan's hand. The emerald green jade pendant was sparkling with a sparkling light. Yiqing Luo walked forward and stretched out her hand to pick up the jade pendant. The judicial officer's sleeves moved, and an invisible profound energy stopped Yiqing Luo's hand. "What are you trying to do?" "Dirty." Yiqing Luo shot a glance at the judicial officer and took a step back. "This jade pendant was given to me by Xian. If she touches it, it will be dirty." Following that, she said indifferently, "This jade pendant is merely a tool to draw your attention to me. Now that I'm standing here, this thing should be returned to its rightful owner, right?" "You mean someone is using this jade pendant to frame you?" The judicial officer's eyes were filled with ridicule. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. "It doesn't matter if you believe it or not, I don't care. But if someone really framed me, then your Linglong Palace is merely a chess piece in their hands." The grand judge pursed his lips and did not speak again. A pair of gloomy eyes flickered with a cold light under the flickering candlelight. Yiqing Luo chuckled as she stepped aside. "Grand Judicial Magistrate doesn't trust me, so I'll have to trouble Grand Judicial Magistrate to bring the jade pendant over personally." The grand judge's face darkened, and he didn't say a word. "I'm sure Xian wouldn't wish for the thing he gave me to be in the hands of a corpse. For such a long time, right?" Yiqing Luo wasn't in a hurry as she shot a glance at her with a smile, which didn't look like a smile. The grand judge's face twitched. He suppressed his anger and sneered. Then he strode toward Mu Qiulan. He bent down and took out the jade pendant. The jade pendant felt cold in his hand. The raging anger in his chest seemed to be soothed by this cold feeling. She clenched the jade pendant tightly as her gaze swept up and down. After confirming that there wasn't any unknown aura or clues on the jade pendant, he then threw it to Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and caught the jade pendant. She took out a handkerchief and wrapped the jade pendant before putting it into the azure dew bracelet. Chapter 4090. Yiqing Luo didn't bother about the grand judge as she walked directly towards Mu Qiulan's corpse. Mu Qiulan died in agony. His entire face was contorted. No matter how he looked at it, it seemed like he was killed by an enemy, making people die so painfully. He must hate her to the core. In everyone's eyes, Yi Qingluo indeed should hate Mu Qiulan. After all, Mu Qiulan and Yi Qingluo were fighting for the overlord. Yi Qingluo knew why Mu Qiulan revealed such a painful and twisted expression right before she died. Because, in order to prevent Mu Qiulan from being controlled by the evil Yin energy in the West Cliff Mountain, he had taken the initiative to do so. The medicinal pill she gave to Mu Qiulan was able to maintain her consciousness, allowing her to remain clear-headed. The time limit is long. He had to take the antidote. In a state of extreme lucidity, his life had been ended in such a painful manner. Mu Qiulan's death was indeed quite painful. Yi Qingluo touched her chin. Well, this was indeed her fault. Then, she looked at Mu Qiulan's corpse for a moment. Coming to the crime scene, Yi Qingluo indeed didn't have much hope. After all, when the people from the Linglong Palace rushed to the Treasures Exchange Hall, he would definitely investigate the house from top to bottom. One of the reasons why she came was to retrieve the jade pendant which Dmo Xian had given her. Secondly, he wanted to see if he could find anything special on Mu Qiulan's corpse. Seeing Yi Qingluo staring at the corpse motionlessly, the Grand Judge frowned and said coldly, "What? Did you find any clues?" "I didn't manage to find any clues, but I did see. Your mysterious maiden's death was indeed not a pretty sight to behold," Yi Qingluo replied. "Great Judge." Facing Yi Qingluo, she must maintain her composure. With a sullen face, she sneered and said, "Are you going to keep watching?" "Yes, of course." Yi Qingluo stood by the bed, raised the corner of her eyes and glanced sideways at the Grand Magistrate. She smiled teasingly. "Is the Grand Magistrate worried that I might notice something? Why are you so impatient? Don't think that this elder doesn't know that you're trying to stall for time." The Grand Judge's eyes were also very cold. "You just need to stall for time. This elder has plenty of time." Yi Qingluo scoffed lightly. This judge hated her quite a lot. She was too lazy to argue with the Grand Inquisitor, and continued to look around the corpse. He did not miss a single detail. Suddenly in her mind, Old Man Song's voice sounded. "Hold on, Luo lass, I sensed a different aura from the jade pendant you just threw in." Yi Qingluo was stunned. "What do you mean?" "There's no trace of Mu Qiulan's aura on the jade pendant. It's likely that it was placed in her hands after her death," Old Man Song said. On the jade pendant, this old man sensed a very faint but very clear evil aura. Evil Yin Qi. Was it the same as the Yin Qi that she had sensed when she had just pushed open the door? Old Man Song said. "I'm afraid this is something done by Dark Shadow Palace again. If I'm not wrong, Dark Shadow Palace is planning to use Linglong Palace to detain you in the land domain. To detain her in the earth domain. Could it be, was the secluded Darkness Palace preparing to attack the Heaven Realm? Heavenly Realm. No matter how powerful the person behind the scenes of the Gloomy Palace was, he would not be able to escape. They probably wouldn't dare to challenge the entire Heaven Realm, right? If he angered the public, the people of the Heaven Realm united, how could the Palace of Gloomy Darkness have a chance to breathe? The Heaven Realm wasn't like Nirvana Realm, or the land domain which was easy to deal with. Would the Palace of Gloomy Darkness take such a huge risk? Chapter 4091. This thought made Yi Qingluo's expression turn grave. Before coming here, she had more or less linked Mu Qiulan's death to the Palace of Umbra, but he also felt that it should be impossible. After all, the Palace of Gloomy Darkness had suffered heavy losses during the auction. It even attracted the attention and investigation of the Heavenly Law historian. In a short period of time, if they made any big moves, it would be pushing the Dark Abyss Palace to the surface. Unless there was something wrong with the secluded Darkness Palace's brain, they wouldn't do that. But now, the evil Qi on the jade pendant had already proved that this matter was definitely related to the Dark Palace. The goal of the Gloomy Palace was obviously to use the Linglong Hall to restrain her. Then the reason for restraining her? What is it? Could it be that it was really as she thought? "Miss Yi, have you thought of something?" The great judge had been staring at Yi Qingluo's face, and when he saw her suddenly congealed expression, he immediately asked. Yi Qingluo's eyelashes fluttered as she restrained the deep thoughts in her eyes and raised her head to look at the grand judge. No, no. The great judge frowned slightly. From Yiqing Luo's expression, it didn't seem like she hadn't discovered anything. The grand judge glanced at Mu Qiulan's body and said in a deep voice, Miss Yi, you have to understand that if you can't find any evidence to prove your innocence, you will be the prime suspect. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. I'm clear, I indeed didn't discover anything. The grand judge furrowed his brows even tighter. Somehow, she felt that Yiqing Luo was hiding something from her. This feeling of being kept in the dark made her feel that Yiqing Luo didn't put her in her eyes at all. Since there's nothing to be found, then, as a suspect in the murder of Shadowless City's mysterious fairy, can Lady Yi follow me back to Linglong Palace? The grand judge's expression darkened and his voice deepened. Yiqing Luo was very cooperative this time as she spread out her hands and shrugged. All right. The grand judge's words were blocked by the word good. She coughed violently, and her face turned red with anger. With a flick of her sleeves, she turned around and walked towards the door. Yiqing Luo took another look at Mu Qiulan's corpse as her vision swept around the surroundings. Only then did he follow the great judge out of the room. As soon as the two walked out of the room, Patriarch Qiao, who was standing outside the courtyard, asked, How is it? Did you find any evidence? Yiqing Luo shook her head. The surrounding spectators sighed, and then they looked at each other and were extremely shocked. Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu, who were standing at the door, were overjoyed. You didn't find any evidence? Miss Yi, since that's the case, don't forget what you promised us. What conditions? Qiao family head did not know. Hall Mistress Ji's cold and charming red lips curled upwards, looking sexy and mature as she stared at Yiqing Luo. Like a rooster who had won a battle, arrogantly and complacently. Miss Yi has said it herself, if she is unable to prove her innocence, she will be treated as a suspect and follow us to Linglong Hall for investigation. Patriarch Qiao's face froze. Almost reflexively, he was already standing in front of Yiqing Luo. He glared fiercely at the people in front of him. I would like to see how you are going to take away the guests of my Qiao family. Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu's expressions instantly darkened. What does Patriarch Qiao mean by this? Patriarch Qiao's expression was solemn, as he was about to open his mouth. A fair little hand gently pressed on his shoulder. Chapter 4092. Patriarch Qiao, there's no need to get angry. If your health is affected because of me, Yin will find trouble with me. Yiqing Luo smiled lightly as she appeased Patriarch Qiao. Patriarch Qiao's anger gradually subsided as his expression was still solemn. Shadowless City's mysterious maiden's death is absolutely unrelated to you. Linglong Palace is obviously trying to pin the hat on you. Yiqing Luo smiled as she shook her head. After all, they found my things next to Shadowless City's mysterious maiden's corpse, so it's normal to suspect me. Seeing Yiqing Luo speaking up for Linglong Palace, Hall Master Ji's self-confidence started to swell again. In Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu's eyes, Yiqing Luo's attitude changed after leaving the crime scene was because she didn't find any evidence to prove her innocence, so she was feeling guilty. So she tried to please Linglong Palace in every possible way. Since Miss Yi is so understanding, then it's easy to settle. Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu exchanged glances as they walked towards Yiqing Luo. This is the condition that Miss Yi personally agreed to our Grand Judicial Elder. Since you're unable to prove your innocence, then follow us to Linglong Palace. The two Hall Masters stood on the left and right as they raised their hands towards Yiqing Luo's shoulders. Wait! A low and dignified voice that seemed to carry endless pressure came from it. The moment this voice was heard, the two Hall Masters instantly froze on the spot. From Old Lai's side, a young man dressed in a black brocade robe walked out. That slightly immature face was around 20 years old, but the imposing manner emitted from him, and that pair of eyes which made one feel pressure, it was extremely incompatible with that face. The minute the Grand Judicial Elder saw that young man, his expression changed slightly. Linglong Palace keeps saying that it's my student who killed Shadowless City's mysterious maiden, but before this, my student had always been with us at the Treasures Exchange Hall. so she had no time to commit the crime. The man said expressionlessly, his voice was calm. The person who spoke was Guiwu. The moment he spoke, it made one forget about his young appearance. Even the Grand Judicial Elder, after hearing Guiwu's words, pursed his lips tightly, not daring to reply easily. His gaze rested on Guiwu, as he continued to probe his identity. Right. Old Man Wu is right. I can also be a witness. The imperial lady had been gathering treasures with us all this time. How could she have gone off to kill the Empyrean fairy? Could it be that she has a doppelganger technique? Lao Lai immediately echoed. May I know your name? The great judge did not directly answer Guiwu and Old Lai's words. Instead, he vigilantly sized up Guiwu and asked. Guiwu indifferently spat out 2 words. Guiwu. The grand judge frowned. She had never heard of this name before. However, the aura coming from this person's body was too terrifying. Even she was a little afraid of His Majesty. This man was definitely not what he appeared to be. Who was he? The grand judge furrowed his brows. Before being clear of Guiwu's true identity, she didn't dare to act blindly without thinking. However, the great judge had neglected the fact that she had 2 hall masters by her side. Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu saw that they were about to bring Yiqing Luo back to Linglong Hall. As long as Yiqing Luo entered Linglong Palace, they were in their territory. Wasn't he still at their mercy? But a young man who looked to be in his 20s stepped in. How could they tolerate this? You're tuning in to the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.